close this out. Okay. 6.0. Oh,
Hang on.
okay. Okay. 6.0, reconvene open session, procedural business, 5:30 p.m. 6.1, call to order. The Board of Trustees are hereby reconvening open session at 5:37 p.m. 6.2, trustees to identify themselves by first and last name to formally establish quorum.
Bill Mellinger, Trustee Area 1.
Dana Ridlin, Trustee Area 2.
Cindy Gardner, Trustee Area 3.
Natalie Lindeman, Trustee Area 4.
Jordan Zarate, Trustee Area 5, Running Springs, Arrow Bear Lake, Green Valley Lake.
Okay, 6.3, Pledge of Allegiance. Zach, if you'd be so kind to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
American flag here. All right. Right hands over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance.
I pledge
to the
allegiance
flag
to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God,
indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. 7.0, closed session report. 7.1, announcement of reportable actions taken during closed session.
None.
Okay. 8.0, public testimony. 8.1, public comment period for items listed on this agenda and non-agenda items within the subject matter jurisdiction of the governing board. And I think I'll go ahead and read all of this, and then we'll go ahead and determine what to do from there. So the public comment period is administered by state law and is the point in the meeting set aside for members of the public to share their opinions with the board. Open meeting laws do not permit the board to engage in dialogue or answer questions, so it may not take action on non-agenda issues raised at the public comment period. The board, for example, may refer any matters to the superintendent for review or take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Due to the modified meeting procedures during the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, if a member of the public would like to address the governing board on agenda and non-agenda items within the subject matter of their jurisdiction, an email should have been submitted to the executive secretary to the superintendent by noon today. Written comments will be read aloud and are limited to 5 minutes per item. The board limits the total input time for items within the same subject to 20 minutes. So I do have 4 public comments that were submitted by noon today. And I understand that there's a 5th comment that is probably waiting in my email inbox that was submitted at 4 p.m. So I'd like to to find out from the rest of the board members what you would wish to do as far as that 5th public comment.
I make a motion that we accept that 5th comment and go ahead and include it.
I'll second that motion.
Okay. Any discussion?
Just to clarify, that was because it was submitted, did you say at 4 p.m. past the noon deadline?
4 hours past the noon deadline, correct.
Got it. Thank you.
So any other comments? Okay, so I'll call for a vote. All in favor for accepting that 4th comment, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. I'll go ahead and read the 4 other comments, and then it'll take me a few moments to pull up that 5th comment to be able to read that one. So the one thing that also do need to get some guidance is Michelle or Connie, do you know if that 5th comment is of the same subject of the other 4 comments?
Yes, it's on the same subject, mess.
Okay, so we have a total of 5 different public comments. And so on a single topic, we have a 20-minute limit or a 5-minute individual limit. I believe some of the ones I already have are not going to take the full 5 minutes. Another one definitely would go over 5 minutes, I imagine. So the question is, do we wish to put any kind of time limits on these comments?
I'd like to make a motion to read them as submitted in their entirety.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second. The one thing I will say is with one of the public comments, there is a long list of citations of listed websites. I would propose that we do not need to have all of those different websites read off as part of the reading.
If they could just be submitted to us, that would be acceptable for me if everyone else agrees.
Me too.
Okay. So do we need to have amended motion then before we
Yes.
vote on that? Okay.
I'd like to amend my motion to read all of the public comments in their entirety as submitted with the exception of web links, which will be submitted to the board via email.
I agree as the second.
Okay, fantastic. Calling for the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, the motion passes unanimously. So going on to that, I'm going to go to 4.2 public comments. I am reading the comments in the order in which they were received via email. So first one, September 9th, 2021. Dear Rim of the World Unified School District School Board, I am a 25-year resident of the mountain. It is therefore with a heavy heart that I find myself at odds with a few people in our community who have made the decision to not follow facts and science, but instead the unfounded, untrue conspiracy theories about this pandemic, where more than 4.6 million people around the world and 653 million in our country have succumbed to this disease that can now be eradicated via vaccine and masking. I don't trust my neighbors. How sad. It is a strange time when we care less about our children than ourselves. Our children are more concerned and compliant than the adults. They get it. My 2-year-old grandchild easily wears a mask, but the adult walking into a restaurant, a bar, a drugstore, or a school can't. Why is that? Does this adult think they are more infringed upon than the than the child that can't be vaccinated, who has asthma, diabetes, cancer, or other underlying ailment? This adult is a threat to all children and those who would like to be vaccinated but can't because of their health reasons. These few have been threatening teachers, administrators, and board members. They are the cowards who are afraid of a vaccine and a Q-tip. Interestingly, they are probably immunized against measles, polio, diphtheria, etc. It seems their goal is to close schools again. Why is that? It seems they want to get enough children, their families, teachers, and teachers' families sick that this will be the case. These few must be overwhelmed by the silent, intelligent majority who do not get their news from Facebook. It's time to speak up against these few. Wear a mask, stay socially distant, and get the vaccination. Then we won't have to look at each other with suspicion. It would be nice to greet each other again at the post office or a favorite restaurant. Let's get back to being neighbors again. Thank you for reading my letter and taking my comments into consideration. Mountain resident. Here's the second one. I'd like to begin by debunking a myth commonly told by people who oppose mask mandates, that masking doesn't work. There is a convenient list of 49 studies, either peer-reviewed or pending, on people of all ages that prove that collective masking does work. It's easy to find. Just type KXAN 49 studies into Google. It's the top link. It is crucial to note that masking works on the exhale. My kids wear a mask to protect yours. Yours wear a mask to protect mine. Studies done on one person wearing a mask in public or on N95 masks miss the point entirely. The first link in the list of 49 studies demonstrates how well masks work and includes links to studies debunking that masks harmfully change the wearer's gas exchanges or that kids are harmed by not being able to see people's expressions. Decisions about our kids' health must be made by the researched, considered opinion of a consensus of medical experts, not the emotions of parents with no expertise in medicine or research, who have taken a common sense measure to keep their kids' schools open and turned into a political football. Typing "proof masks don't work" into YouTube is not a match for having a PhD in medical research. We don't have the freedom to drive drunk for a reason. Go ahead and pile your car into a tree and remove yourself from the gene pool if you like, but you don't have the right to put others at risk. And we don't have the freedom to send our kids to school to sit close together in an enclosed space for 35 hours a week unmasked, putting every other kid in the classroom and the teacher at risk. One infected teacher in Marin County took off her mask to read to her students for just 2 days. 12 of the 24 kids got COVID, and who knows how many were infected by those 12 kids. Proposing that we should conduct our classrooms in the same way when our first 7 grades can't be vaccinated is utterly irresponsible and foolish. They're sitting ducks with absolutely nothing being done to protect them. Families who participate in efforts to keep the schools open by wearing masks, the effectiveness of which is shown over and over again in the 49 studies cited in the KXAN 49 studies link, deserve to go to school without fear of unmasked kids infecting them. While we can't eliminate risk entirely, masking is an obvious step, and it only works if everyone is masked. Once again, compare Florida, a huge mess where mask mandates are against the law, with California, where masks are mandated. Florida's per capita rate of hospitalization for ages 1 through 17 is 7 times that of California's. Why on earth would we do that to our kids? I wholeheartedly support the board in its compliance with the state mandate. Thanks, George Whitty. I would like to draw attention to a crucial point made by the district's attorney about our legal liability if we don't abide by the state mask mandate. Many insurance providers sent out letters stating that if the school district is not following the applicable guidance involving both vaccinations and masks, they will not cover claims related to COVID. So you'd be uninsured. That was a quote. This school district would be forced to shut down if we lose our liability insurance. One lawsuit would wipe us out financially, and even defending one lawsuit would mean programs cut. The attorney goes on, quote, "There are criminal penalties for people who willfully ignore government orders or governor's words. So there is the potential for a criminal act," end quote. We can't take that chance either. And finally, in reference to us possibly losing funding by defying the mandate, he states, quote, "It is guidance that's being codified for your county that's coming from the state. So there's always that risk when your funding source is telling you to do something that you're not doing," end quote. In our district, already strapped for funds, we can't take chances of losing so much as a penny for failing to abide by the mandate. However people feel about this issue, defying the mandate is simply not an option. Other districts who have decided to do so, such as San Diego, withdrew these decisions once the consequences were clear. If there are issues with the mask mandate, our board members' hands are quite tied, and complaints about the mandate need to be addressed at the level of the state government who issued the mandates. It's how a democracy works. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and thank you for doing the right thing by our district. Regards, Leah Hidajat. This is the 4th one. Dear ROWUSD, I am respectfully requesting you review the mask choice resolution and send it to the state. You are elected to represent the students and parents of this community. This is what the majority of students, parents, and your voters want. We simply want to be given an opt-out waiver to medically exempt our own children from wearing masks. At this time, we are asking that you forward our desires to the state level and get the district's attorney to review the mask choice resolution in detail. Also, as an anecdote, did you know there has not been one verified COVID case transferred from student to teacher in the country? Who are we protecting here? It seems like we aren't protecting the students or teachers who are the majority of population you directly serve. Attached is an example of the resolution we wish for you to forward to the state. Thank you. Amy Dahlberg-Wisman, RIM Parents for Mask Choice. And so attached to that is a board resolution on CDPH guidance for K-12 schools / let them breathe. Whereas the California Department of Public Health CDPH announced that as of June 15, 2021, masks would be required for all individuals in indoor K-12 school settings, pending updated guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC. And whereas the CDC releases its guidance for COVID-19 prevention in K-12 schools, CDC guidance, on July 9th, 2021, recommending that 1, vaccinated students and adults do not need to wear masks indoors. 2, prevention strategies such as masking and social distancing be removed one at a time, quote, based on local conditions, end quote. And 3, schools, quote, determine the prevention strategies needed in their area by monitoring levels of community transmission, parentheses, i.e. low, moderate, substantial, or high, end parentheses, and local vaccine coverage and use of screening testing to detect cases in K-12 schools. And whereas immediately following the release of the CDC guidance, the California Department of Public Health, CDPH, decided not to follow the CDC guidance and instead implemented restrictions regardless of local conditions or vaccination coverage, including requiring masks for all students and adults in K-12 settings regardless of vaccination status. And whereas the CDPH further stated it was, quote, not recommending physical distancing due to the obstacles it would present at California schools' full opening, end quote, despite evidence that thousands of schools fully reopened last March when the CDPH revised its guidance to only recommend 3 feet of spacing. And whereas the CDPH announced that it would be mandating masks not for scientific reasons, rather because, quote, students should be able to walk into school without worrying about whether they will feel different or singled out for being vaccinated or unvaccinated, end quote. And whereas numerous studies and the CDC confirm that children are at an incredibly low risk of severe disease, long-term side effects, and death from COVID-19, with a mortality risk substantially less than from influenza or common activities such as riding in a car or swimming. And whereas numerous studies found low case rates in countries where schools did not require masks, and studies published by the CDC and the COVID-19 School Response Dashboard found no difference in case rates between schools with and without student mask mandates. And whereas students do not require masks, quarantines, testing, vaccination, or any other significant prevention measures during flu season, despite studies showing influenza is more severe and more deadly than COVID-19, with the CDC estimating that approximately 600 children died from influenza during the 2017-2018 season, despite wide distribution of an influenza vaccine. And whereas numerous epidemiologists, pediatricians, and healthcare professionals have publicly advocated for the removal of mask requirements for children, and over 40 states have eliminated the mask requirement in schools for the upcoming school year. And whereas the World Health Organization, WHO, states that children under 5 years old should not be required to wear masks, and requiring masks for children ages 6 through 11 should be made based on several factors, including the impact of wearing a mask on a child's psychosocial development. And whereas the WHO also recommends against children wearing masks during exercise or play, as masks compromise a child's ability to breathe. And whereas recent studies have shown that mask wearing can impact a child's language development, emotional development, interpersonal communication, and over physiological and psychological health. And whereas the substantial majority of the population of California, particularly those at high risk of severe COVID-19, have been vaccinated or naturally infected, with CDPH reporting that approximately 85.9% of Californians have antibodies, a number which will continue to increase. And whereas adult vaccination and natural immunity are effective at driving down the number of new cases in a community, and whereas the CDPH wholly ignores the benefits of both adult vaccination and natural immunity from COVID-19 in reducing outbreaks and transmission, and whereas the CDPH continues to mandate restrictions including masks, quarantines, asymptomatic testing, temperature screenings, plexiglass barriers, and cleaning procedures, even if a community reports no cases, hospitalizations, or deaths from COVID-19. And despite clear evidence that these restrictions are ineffective, unnecessary, and harmful, to the health and education of a child. And whereas as many as 50 to 90% of RT-PCR tests may inaccurately identify a subject as positive for COVID-19 when the subject is not infectious, resulting in unnecessary multi-week quarantines and the exclusion of millions of students from in-person education. And whereas quarantining students for days or weeks due to close contact with an infected patient denies students their constitutional rights to an education and has not been shown to reduce the spread of all, this board establishes the following goals. Bullet points: advocate in writing to the CDPH to remove mandatory requirements for preventative measures such as masks, quarantines, and asymptomatic testing. Allow school districts to consult with city and county health departments to determine the need for safety protocols based on local conditions. Advocate for parental choice for masking and vaccinating their children. Ensure that mask requirements will not be used as punishment to coerce children to get vaccinated. Be it further resolved that this board commits to acting at all times in the best interest of students, including educating students and families on the overwhelming benefits of in-person education, the low risk of COVID-19 to children, the evidence that students are at least less risk of infection from COVID-19 in school, that out of school, and the evidence that in-person education does not contribute to the spread of COVID-19. And be it further resolved that this board is committed to assisting schools in returning to normalcy in the classroom, including the removal of and all prevention strategies which are not based in science, have harms that outweigh the benefits, or which impede in any way a student's ability to fully participate in classroom instruction. And be it further resolved that this board will seek out the assistance of any and all local public health agencies for decisions regarding safety protocols in schools, specifically requesting assistance to understand how local conditions should inform the implementation and discontinuation of safety protocols such as masks, quarantines, and testing. And be it further resolved that this board will transmit official copies of this resolution to the following superintendents for all school districts within the County Department of Public Health, the County Department of Education, California Congress members, the California Governor, the California Department of Public Health, and any other entities the board deems appropriate for this resolution. Adopted this blank day of blank in 2021. Motion made by : second made by : members voting aye, members voting nay, members abstaining, members not present. And the remaining portion of this is the citations, which is the list of websites or URLs. And then if you can please hang on, give me a moment to pull up the last public comment. Small type. I'm going to read it right off my screen. Good evening. I appreciate this opportunity to address the board around the issue of COVID safety in our schools. I am a mother of a 13-year-old who is attending Mary Putnam Hank Intermediate as an 8th grade student. Since the last board meeting, I am saddened that we have lost a much-loved teacher due to COVID-19. I am more deeply saddened that the loss of a teacher has not moved people to understand the importance of masks. I am struggling with a culture in which people are more concerned about their personal desires than they are about the health of everyone, including our committed teachers. Despite being fully vaccinated, I know several people that have contracted COVID-19 due to the new Delta variant. Fortunately, their vaccines also were helpful in preventing severe illness and death. The rate of those who will contract this virus that are fully vaccinated is estimated to be up to 35%. It is also important to know that many people are at risk for severe COVID due to pre-existing health conditions and age, being over age 45. Most people over the age of 50 are treated for some condition. Most take some kind of medication. These conditions that are manageable are game changers with this virus. I would like the average age of of our teachers and their occurrence of pre-existing conditions to be considered in this discussion. Many of my son's teachers are over 45, probably most. Many have health conditions that put them at risk for severe COVID if they contract this virus. Some teachers may not be able to take the vaccine. Some may have had the vaccine and are candidates for a booster. Some may not have developed immunities from the first vaccine. All of them are important. All of them matter. The least we can do is wear a mask to protect them and others. Some parents in the last meeting cited child development and language development as factors that justify not requiring children to wear masks. The representative who spoke last month from the Department of Health and Human Services stated that as a physician, he has seen no negative health effects from mask wearing. Do some children find it difficult? I'm sure they do. Are they losing developmental gains as a result? I find this claim highly suspect. It bears knowing that the age of acquisition of language is 5. This means we have a complete language system developed by age 5. Children are not still learning basic pronunciation by this age if they are typical in their abilities and development. Likewise, facial expressions are only one component of social development. If we are speaking of children with disabilities, there are effective masks that have a window that can be purchased for them. Children are at school 6 hours per day and with their own family, many more hours than 6. While I agree that education is important, skill development takes place across the spectrum of environments. I think that the home is still the most influential environment for the development of children. Through this letter, please know that you continue to have my full support in your effort to meet the mandate established by the Governor of California, as well as establishing and enforcing any steps that must be taken to provide a safe and healthy environment for our kids so that they can stay in school in person. Sincerely, Kathleen Coombs Stevens, parent. Okay, let me get back to this. Okay, so that was the end of public comments. 8.3, RTA and CSA representatives. Do we have any? Okay, can you repeat that?
Oh, can you hear me? RTA president here.
Hi. Yes, I can hear you. We got you.
Hi. So good evening, RIM School Board and any stakeholders who are watching. I just want to be transparent as possible with all of our stakeholders. To start off with, we as RTA recognize that our entire staff is working effortlessly to make sure that RIM of the World as a district continues to run. Anxiety and stress amongst our members is very high. We are all grieving the loss of Mr. Powelson, and we've been trying our hardest to work through this, not only individually, but also for our students who are affected. Due to the teacher and substitute shortage, we are taking up extra classes during our prep periods. You've heard of us splitting up classes and pulling our administrators, our TOSAs, or all our other staff from their normal jobs to be in the classroom. I can't tell you enough how dedicated our staff is, and sometimes we feel like our efforts to keep our students safe in a safe educational environment are not appreciated enough. We want to keep our staff, students, and community safe. But when parents tell their students not to wear masks, or when we have instances of irate behaviors from adults and students towards teachers and administrators, or when individuals are not getting tested to ensure accurate contact tracing efforts, it makes many of us frustrated and feel powerless. And honestly, many are weighing the options of retirement or moving to districts where safety is of the utmost priority. Teachers, counselors, and nurses and all these other positions are scarce as it is. If we don't come up with solutions quickly, there will be consequences that ultimately will negatively affect our students in terms of their health and overall education. We ask our members to respectfully follow the guidelines to keep our schools operating and for our students to get what they need educationally and overall social emotionally. RTA is collaborating with the district to work towards solutions to ensure everyone's safety. But at the moment, in all honesty, our morale is low. But we are hopeful that we can remedy some of the issues that we currently face as a district. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anybody from CSEA?
Not at this time.
Okay. Okay, so moving on to 9.0, governing board members' reports and announcements. Bill, do you want to lead us off, please?
So I attended a meeting today that was looking at the ramifications, the legal ramifications for vaccinations, required vaccinations, contact tracing, all those kinds of things. There's many, many challenges, but I have to pause. September 11th is Saturday, and it's 20-year anniversary. I don't even like to use that. It's the 20th year that we remember the loss of significant life. And Mr. Pallison was the member of this school district that reminded students of that, who took the time to make presentations to tell that, so that children who have been born many years after that fateful day on September 11, 2001, 20 years ago, when firefighters rushed in and police officers rushed in and other emergency people rushed in as people were rushing to get out of a building that a plane had crashed into. And then suddenly that second plane, and everyone knew this was something much more terrible that was going on. And then the third plane into the Pentagon, and then the fourth plane into Pennsylvania. And can I just ask for us to pause for a moment? Obviously in honor of Mr. Pallison, but more in that, in honor of the people that he tried to remind us of, those who died that day, people who were simply working in an office building and it was attacked, family members who still maybe are suffering because of the ill effects of being just even in that vicinity. So can we just, if it be all right, Madam President, for us to take a moment of silence in honor of all of them? September 11th, 2001 is a terrible day. And we need to remember what happened that day. And there won't be enough time of silence for somebody who lost their husband or wife, their father or mother, their brother or sister. There are those who will forever grieve because of that day. We're at a sad time also in our world and in our country right now. Too much has been politicized. The division is intense on both sides. Are you for masks or against masks? There's anger on both sides. Politics has been played into this way too much. Somehow, together, we have a responsibility to say, how do we work for the safety of the children, for the unity of our community? I, for one, am one who has some very strong feelings about the inalienable rights of every individual, about the freedom to make personal decisions. But I also am one who has a great concern about, well, in Rotary, we call it service above self. In the church, we call it, if you want to be great in the kingdom of God, learn to be the servant of all. And there are some things that we can do to serve. And we have to work at how we communicate together and how we look at all sides. I should say that for the last week, because I've studied most of the studies that say masks are unnecessary, I had to do research the other way. I know people think that our board has not looked at those sides at all, that we're only looking at one side, but I'm looking at everything. The intense research and evidence, there is evidence about the value of masks. Yes, there's also those opinions that say, no, they don't help. But the fact is, We wear masks in surgery to protect sneezing and things like that. There are things that we do to try to protect people. And so I have chosen personally to at times to wear a mask because it's a way that I can try to be sensitive to others. And as a member of the board, I just ask that we continue to try as a community to listen to one another, to care about one another, to do what we can to provide safety for all. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you, Bill. Cindy, if you can go next, please.
So I'm going to just say, well done, Bill. You spoke everything eloquently about the board's due diligence in researching the mask issue on both sides. So I'm not going to say anything more about it because you did such a wonderful job expressing what we do. I do want to say that I appreciate our RTA president's comments as well. I do believe there is a lot of anxiety with teachers and staff across the state, across this country. They are experiencing burnout. They are looking, they thought, oh, I'll retire in 3 years. And now it's, well, maybe at the end of this year. So everybody is feeling that stress. Our cabinet for our district and cabinets for other districts are feeling overwhelmed and stressed with all the requirements that this pandemic has brought onto their plate. And it's everybody, our custodians, our security, our administrators with contract tracing, our cabinet, and our teachers trying to teach while having the interruptions that this pandemic has brought into the classroom. It's we hate this word now, but it is unprecedented. And I think that we just all need to, as Bill said, we need to service to each other and have grace with each other and recognize that not just make it a little bit easier for everybody by having civil conversations and by helping our teachers do their job, by helping our administrators do their job, which is to educate our kids. And that's what I'm going to say about that. On another note, I'm excited to have been invited and honored to be invited to be part of a panel at the CS California State Board Association's conference that we'll be attending the first week of December. I'm on the small panel discussion, and I'm very, very excited about that. So I get to talk about our district and our challenges due to our location, our size, our topography, or everything. So I'm very, very excited to be part of that discussion. The other thing I want to talk about is a community event put on by one of our PTAs. The Rim High PTSA is holding its electronic waste recycling event October 2nd and 3rd in the Rim High School front parking lot from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. both the Saturday and the Sunday. Again, this is servicing the community. So they'll take your computers, your printers, your broken vacuum cleaners, all of those things that you want to get rid of and you didn't at the last garage sale Labor Day weekend. Please bring them to PTA. It'll help you out and it will help the PTA out as well. I'm looking forward to the football game this Friday. I wasn't able to attend the first one because my husband and I decided to do a getaway weekend. So I'm excited about attending this football game. I'm ready to get my rah-rah on. I saw a lot of college football last weekend. Fight on, USC won. Feel really good about that. So fight on, Rim Scots. Hey, stop Bill Mellinger. All right.
Thank you, Cindy. Jordan, if you can go, please.
Sure. Well, congratulations to you, Cindy, of course, to be on that panel. It's very exciting. I wanted to start as well by just acknowledging the loss of Mr. Powelson. And that is, of course, something we're all feeling right now. And I appreciate those words and also RTA's president's words as well on that. And I also wanted to acknowledge how hard it is on staff right now. I've been talking to, I've heard from teachers and administrators in other districts. It's such a hard time, and it really, really pains me to see all the struggles that especially teachers are facing in the classrooms right now. At the height of the pandemic, it was, and pre-pandemic as well, there was no greater hero than teachers, public school teachers. And it seems that that's changing. And it's hard to see, in today's world, a teacher should only have to worry about and focus on the education of our students and our future community members. So I've really been hearing a lot of that, not just in our district, but in all districts. And they're facing stress, more stress than they ever have. And that includes last year's year of distance learning. So to hear that staff members are even more stressed than then, it's a lot. And I think we all feel for that. I also wanted to touch on our staffing shortages. And you'll see on, that we'll be addressing some of that on 12.4, action item 12.4 on today's agenda. But I want to thank everyone that's been jumping into substitute. I know that we've had a lot of folks that are not typically substitutes that are jumping in and substituting right now. I know that our superintendent, Michelle's been in the classroom. I know Todd's been doing some substituting too. And I know that it's, everyone's jumping in where they can. I even know that we have a sub that's driving some buses right now, and they're not a bus driver technically, but they're certified. They have all the licensing required, but they're jumping in and helping, and I appreciate that so much. I'm also looking forward on, this pandemic, as we're talking about it, I'm looking forward to our new contact tracing and testing partner, AM LLC. I wanted to thank our administrators for jumping in on this quickly. I know that there's a lot of districts that are still working on finding vendors right now. It's so difficult that this requirement came out, when school started. There wasn't time for a lot of districts to prepare, but I appreciate that our district has jumped on it. We found a vendor, we've already signed, they're already being onboarded, and other surrounding districts are still in that process. It takes a long time, but I wanted to acknowledge and I'm really looking forward to that, to having contact tracing done by professionals that have been in the industry for a long time, that are very qualified to take that on and to take that burden off of some of our administrators right now. I know there are other districts that have teams of contact tracers internally that are just trying to get by until they can find a vendor. We don't have, 20, 30, some districts have more, contact tracers. We've just got a handful that are just working to implement, working to get by until our AMLSC is fully implemented. Other than that, I did want to just acknowledge and say that we as a board were here. I know that I talk to people every weekend at the farmers market. I won't be there this weekend, but I will be there every weekend thereafter. And we're all available. We're all here. So thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. Natalie, you're up.
Thank you. Also, I would like to begin with acknowledging Mr. Paulson. We were fortunate last year to have him teach one of our foster children, and I got to have some really great moments with him and see his kindness and his care for the students, which is definitely going to be missed. As a figure skater, I appreciated his love for hockey and share it too. And I hope that the community is able to, honor him appropriately. One of the things that I want to acknowledge that I've seen in the classrooms is that our teachers are very gracefully keeping the disruptions of what's going on with COVID, what's going on with the world outside of their classrooms, outside of, they're not letting it interrupt the work that they're doing with the students. Now, we know that it's affecting it because, again, our subs are short, where teachers are having to take out, they're stressed out. but my kids would not know any different because their teachers are completely dedicated, completely present, prepared, engaged in the teachings that they're doing. And my children are absolutely loving being in school. They're loving being around their friends, being around the other staff and people there. My husband had an opportunity to be in union duty this week and is likely going to do some more of that moving forward. He just loves being around the kids, and students are happier. You know, I was able to go to the football game and see of all of them interacting with each other, and that sense of community is starting to come back. And I'm glad to see that. I hope that as adults, we don't get in the way of allowing our students to be healthy, to be safe, and to be in school. I really hope that we could put our personal feelings aside and focus on what is in the best interest of the students. I do see our teachers doing their very, very best at that, and I know it is hard to do in these times. So I appreciate them very much. I also look forward to tomorrow's game. Hopefully we will end 3-0, and I hope, you know, everyone has a wonderful time until our next board meeting where we can do this all over again. That's all. Thanks, Dana.
Thank you, Natalie. One of the challenges of going 5th out of 5 is I'm constantly rewriting what I'm going to say because you guys do a great job of covering all the things that I wanted to discuss. So I do think it absolutely bears repeating. One, my sadness about Mr. P and his passing, and I know more will be said about that, but it's heartbreaking, and yeah, just it is. Also, even prior to COVID, I felt like the job of teacher is basically impossible, to try and do absolutely everything. I know the teachers that I know constantly feel inadequate, even in the best of times. And so now with all the additional demands that have been put on them, from going distance learning last year and hybrid to now trying to maintain a masked classroom while teaching and while dealing with incredible shortages within the district. The shortages are affecting all of our employees. And I know that Todd and Morgan have been working tirelessly to try and hire, and they've been very successful, and they will continue to do everything they can to be able to bring on board more employees. We've got positive news a couple days ago, and I know that that will continue. But we're dealing with the reality of burnout and frustration with our staff, and we just need to be mindful to make sure that we continue to express our sincere appreciation. It's not uncommon on a daily basis that teachers and other staff members are covering for other classes because of absences. Administrators are filling in. Jordan mentioned about contact tracing, where other districts might have a team. Our administrators, on top of all of the other things that they're doing, they're the ones in charge of contact tracing. And that, again, that's on top of everything else. And it's just, we can't get AMLLC onboarded soon enough, but we're doing too much because we have to. And no wonder there's just that frustration that Gazi was talking about. And so community members, anybody who is coming into touch with anybody associated with RIM, please express your appreciation. Do what you can to help, because the help is needed. It's going to have to be off campus if you're not associated with RIM, but at least just showing the appreciation is much needed right now. Along with that, I know, like Bill mentioned, actually described very aptly, we are a divided community. We're a divided country right now on so many different issues. So I think, surprisingly, if we were able to have conversations with folks that we think we are not seeing eye to eye with, we'll find that there's a lot of common ground. I spoke yesterday to one of the presenters at one of our last board meetings, and she and I were able to find a lot of things that we were in agreement on. And she has requested, and I'd like to follow up on it, seeing if I can work with another board member to offer a town hall so that other folks who wish to have a conversation with us have that opportunity, hopefully sooner rather than later. So if, because of Brown Act, it would have to be just one other board member, or if there's two of you who wish to do it with not having me included, I'm all right with that. But please let me know if you are interested in working with me or another to be able to meet with community members. One of the things that was, a couple of things that were mentioned in our conversation. One is when I asked folks to mask up at our last board meeting, I know that there were other comments at times where people couldn't hear. And it was said that the audience was not able to hear me ask folks to mask up. I was assured that folks in the audience did have masks or would have been fine with putting on masks. So I trust that when we have future board meetings and we have signage and we have a requirement of wearing masks in the building, they have assured me that they will be wearing masks, and also assured me that they did not hear for the request to have masks go up. And considering other things weren't being heard, I trust that they that is the case. So so there's that. Also, let me see if there's anything else. Oh, one other thing that I do wish to mention is today LA Unified School District School Board voted to mandate students 12 or older that they must be vaccinated. I'll speak personally, it would be something that we would put, personally, I'm concerned about that. Bill had mentioned earlier about civil liberties. If it is a state mandate or governor mandate in terms of vaccinations, I will support what the state is requiring us to do as a district. But in terms of, I understand that there's 12 other districts that are looking to consider such a move, and just want to say in this public forum that unless I can be provided convincing arguments otherwise, it's something I do not feel comfortable with, and it's not something that I would support. So that is how I will end my comments. Moving on to 9.2, Superintendent. Michelle, if you would like to go ahead and speak, please.
A couple of things. I'd like to congratulate our winning football team and their 2 wins so far. I'd also like to thank RTA and district administration for working together to decipher the guidelines that came out on September 1st and to look at ways that we can help compensate those that are taking on the burdens of extra students in their class and class splitting and period subbing. We appreciate you. So, and working with us. Thank you to our Mr. Beal and his team for working on the staffing shortages the best that we can. We know that this is a nationwide problem. It's not just a RIM issue, but we appreciate all the work that you've done to do that. RIM's a good place to work, and we need people to look at EdJoin and to sign up and apply for our positions. I would just like to end with thanking Bill for bringing up the 9/11 and the moment of silence for Mr. Paulson. On Saturday, they will, in his honor at 1 o'clock at San Moritz Lodge, they're asking people to gather and to wear purple in his honor. So we would like everyone to know that and to participate in that special event. I apologize that I cannot be there. I will be celebrating my mother's end of life tomorrow and Saturday with my family. So with that being said, I apologize, but I hope the rest of you can be there in my place. Zachary is going to tell us some great things that are happening in schools, and thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. 9.3, Student Representative Report. Zachary Lawrence, Room of the World High School.
Hello, everybody. Just before I get started with my report, I did want to say that the burnout that was mentioned with staff members and with teachers and administrators within our schools, it is not unnoticed by students, and it is reassuring to the students to have staff members and teachers and administrators and security and all of these people coming together for the betterment of our education. And it is appreciated monumentally, and it is not unnoticed. And it is reassuring, at least from a student's perspective, to know that we do have these supportive staff members there that are willing to help out, help out other teachers, help out other staff members, and most importantly, help out the students who are also dealing with a lot going back into this full-time school routine. So I want to leave that there, but just wanted to mention that it is reassuring to see the effort put into the support surrounding everything that's going on right now. And let me try to get my screen share going here. I apologize for the delay. All right. All right, can everybody see the presentation?
Yes.
All right. I just want to make sure you guys aren't blocking anything, are you? Okay. I'm still a little new to some of the aspects of Zoom. All right, so here we are, RIM of the World Unified School District. Everything is back up and running. All of the schools, everything's going great. Students are happy to be back on campus. And we're really getting off to the start of a good school year. First up, we have our RIM of the World high school updates. We did have our back to school night recently. There was an incredible turnout. We had fun events, and getting parents allowed to meet the teachers was a great experience. Kind of just getting back into the swing of things. Taco truck, delicious. And yeah, it was a great turnout, really helped raise the spirits about getting everything back up and running in the schools. And as I mentioned at the last meeting, we do have our learning lab opening up in the library. This will launch next week, and it is available on Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for some additional tutoring in math, English, and science for students in need of a bit of assistance in those subjects. Next up, this is a very hot topic right now. We have the Fighting Scott football 2-0 at the moment. And we do have a home game tomorrow night at RIM of the World High School. I believe it starts at 6 o'clock. Could be wrong though. And it will only be a varsity game. There will be no JV game tomorrow. And the RIM teachers and the administrators are working to revamp our student expectations assembly, and it will be more student forward with student skits and guest speakers to make the presentation a bit more interesting and kind of hold the students' attention. And it will also highlight even more than before the PBIS standards on campus. Next up, we have the PTSA and ASVAB, and these will be administered at RIM of the World High School in a few weeks here in October, the week of the 11th. And those have been announced to all of the students at RIM, and we already do have people signing up for those tests. And next we have the tutorial lab. This is the math intervention teacher, Mr. Longtoe, and also Mr. Wallace. And they are trying to, or in the process of converting one of the rooms at RIM of the World High School into the tutorial lab for avid and math classes to enhance the learning experience in those classes. And we are trying to get pep rallies back up and going at RIM of the world. As we know, it is not in really anybody's best interest to have the entire school in the gym at one time. So we are doing pep rallies at the football games in the student section, which was renamed the Edge, I believe, a year or two ago. And every football game, or most of the football games, we will have events and participation for the students in the Edge to kind of raise the school spirit in absence of our normal pep rallies and assemblies. We do have our Scots College night coming up. This will be on Tuesday, the 28th at 6 p.m. in the RIM library, and it will be to educate students and their families about the college application process, as well as getting prepared for college. Sorry, I'm having a hard time. Alrighty, and the last update for Rim of the World High School is we do have our homecoming dance and our homecoming football game coming up. We have our homecoming game on October 15th against Montana High School, and the following day we will have the homecoming dance on the Saturday. And at this point in time, the dance will be held outdoors to help maintain social distancing. All right, here are the Mph updates. And like I mentioned before, the monumental loss of Mr. Powelson has been felt throughout our entire community. I didn't have him myself, but I have had siblings that have him, and I've heard absolutely nothing but good things about Mr. P. And we will be having a celebration of life, like a memorial for students and their families and the whole community on Saturday at the San Moritz Lodge in Crestline. It will begin at 1 p.m. and we do ask that people who will be in attendance wear purple in honor of Mr. Powelson. And we will also at MPH be having a spirit day to honor Mr. Powelson, where the students will be encouraged to wear hockey jerseys and wear purple. And that spirit day is tomorrow, September 10th. And the VOE PTA will be in front of MPH passing out hockey cards in honor of Mr. Powelson. And they will have their mascot as well as the Murray the Mountain Lion mascot from MPH. Next up, we have the PBIS Student Expectations Assembly at MPH. This was last week on Friday, September 3rd, and it was in collaboration with the MPH administration, their counseling team, and the local Twin Peaks Sheriff Station to reinforce the PBIS standards at MPH. And the just some of the topics in their assembly and in their presentation included the overall PBIS expectations and the incentives and opportunities around that. And then all of the different types and ramifications of harassment, bullying, physical contact, etc. The various interventions and I guess disciplinary action as a result of those breaking any of those rules or going against the PBIS standards in school, as well as how to safely report something that a student might see in school to an adult and administrator, and as well as support services, including counseling and family counseling and the RIM Family Services assistance in just any kind of school related or non-school related difficulties the students may be having. Here we have the LAE updates. Like I said, all of the students are excited to be back on campus, excited to be back in school. The back to school night, again, had a huge turnout at LAE. They had 14 community booths, barbecue truck. They had huge turnout from the community and from families of the students at LAE. And they also have implemented an outdoor classroom where it says here they've released over 3,000 ladybugs into their outdoor classroom. And this area is used not only to get the students outside and engaged with nature, but to also take some small mask breaks during the day and throughout the day, you know, as they get hot. And we have the Voe updates. Their back to school night had an incredible turnout as well. Food trucks, their PTA, pipes and drums. Again, massive community turnout. It's great to see all of the families coming out and supporting everyone getting back to school. And as they say here, things are getting back to normal at MPH. They are repairing their gardens, which took a bit of damage during COVID. And they are also implementing an art project at the moment to get students and staff all together for some campus beautification at Voe. Alrighty, and again, CHE had some record-breaking turnouts at their back to school night. They had the Running Springs and Arrowhead Fire Departments, as well as the Running Springs Library, Mountain Counseling, RIM Family Services, Parks and Rec, and dozens of other organizations come out for their back to school night. And again, taco trucks seems to be the trend, delicious. And they say here that it was their most successful back to school night yet. And here we also have CHE building a garden on their campus. They did receive word from their SSC member that they were granted a $3,000 grant in order to do some more campus beautification, which is good to see around all of the schools, that, you know, campus beautification as well as, you know, the base education it's good to see, because, you know, getting involved with the environment, especially right now, is definitely a big thing for students. And this is the primary garden area at the school, and they do have locked storage and tools and supplies for students and staff to maintain the gardens, as well as learn about the plants in the environment. And the Running Springs Fire Department has donated an AED machine to CHE, and the staff training on that machine will be coming in the next few weeks. Then we have the Mountain High updates. Their back to school night was on August 11th, and it was held virtually, and it was their highest attended back to school night since Mountain High School has been on that campus. And they do have approximately 30 students on campus a day. Everything's getting off to a great start, and they do have their first grading period closing here in the next week on Friday, September 24th. Or I'm sorry, the next 2 weeks on Friday, September 24th. And the principal, as well as a majority of the teachers at Mountain, will be attending the California Continuing Education Association conference from September 18th through the 20th down in San Bernardino, in order to better serve the students at Mountain. And they are bringing on a new consultant who works mainly with the continuation school to bring about change in the next couple years for the next few classes at Mountain. And they have also seen a lot more of a social media following with Mountain High School. Their Instagram was launched back in December, and it is a good way for the school to connect more with students. And we have here the RIM Virtual Academy. And I'm sure as you guys know that this academy has been in the works for some time, and now in perfect timing is up and running. The virtual academy does have about 120 students in K through 12 schools within the district, and they are at full capacity, and there is currently a wait list for the RIM Virtual Academy. But they do have their two teachers, Mrs. Lewis and Mrs. Smith, for the TK through 6th grade students, as well as 15 teachers who work with the 7th through 12th grade students using the Odyssey Wear program. And there was a meet and greet with the TK through 6 teachers on the first day of school, and then a back to school night virtually for the 7th through 12th grade students and their parents on that first week of school as well. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was really fantastic. I like how you have a cohesive look in the PowerPoint. There's a lot of really good information in there. Thank you. Let me get back to our agenda. Okay. 10.0, reports and presentations. 10.1, Student Learning and Achievement 2020-2021 Assessment Update and Report on Learning Recovery. Heather Dominguez, Director of Educational Services. Hello, Heather.
I was muted. So I'll say it again. Good evening, board and Superintendent Murphy, and any audience who may be out there watching in Zoom land. I'm going to share a little bit of information with you this evening as to where we are with some of our assessments that we've conducted and sort of our baseline for learning as we move forward. So let me share my screen. Oh, hold on, let me. Just a moment. Where did it go? The awkward pause as we look for our. Here we go.
No worries, Heather. We've all been there.
Thank you. All right. And let me go back here. Share. Can you see my screen? Do you see learning status data review?
Yes.
All right, lovely.
If you can make it bigger, that would help.
Okay, let's see here. Open with. That's not what I wanted to do. Hold on.
Heather, it's Mark. Was this a PowerPoint?
This is a PowerPoint, yeah.
Okay, so go ahead and open up PowerPoint and then open up the file within PowerPoint.
I gotta move the little people all over the place. Okay.
Is this the computer that you made it on?
It is, yes.
Okay, so did you make it in PowerPoint or in Google Slides?
I made it in slides.
Okay. That looks like it's right there.
Yeah. Okay. Now we need.
And then just hit present.
Thank goodness for Mark Malone. Wait, I need to move this over here.
Present in the upper right corner. Yep.
All right. Is that better?
Yes.
All right. Lovely. Yay. Houston, we have liftoff. All right. So this evening, I'm going to share a little information with you, a learning status data review. So before we get started on some of the data I'm going to share with you this evening, just want to sort of remind you of something we like to talk about in terms of assessment cycles, that tonight we're going to be talking more about those big picture assessments, more of a summative kind of assessment, or those quarterly or annual assessments that are on the right side of this graphic, and that there are lots of other assessments happening within the classroom by teachers that are embedded in the curriculum, that are happening, minute by minute as they're assessing students while they're in the middle of doing their work. Daily, weekly, unit assessments. There's lots of different ways for us to look at how students are achieving and where they're successful and where they're having difficulty. So tonight we're going to be on the far right side of the house in terms of more quarterly, annual, bigger scale summative kinds of assessments. So what this is the elementary assessment schedule that we have established for this school year. Actually, the elementary school has been utilizing this assessment schedule for the last couple of years. So just to outline for you an example of what assessments are being administered and when they are administered. So we have a different assessment calendar for every grade level because the assessments administered are a little different at each grade level due to the age of the students, their competency, and the assessments that we believe are going to give us the best information to know where our students are. So this is a first grade example, a third grade example, but we have these same calendars for second, all grade levels K through fifth for the elementary level. Some of the assessments that we look at, report cards are a piece of information we use as assessments. A platform in the elementary level called ESGI, which is basic skills, phonemic awareness, word knowledge, those kinds of things. DRA is a reading assessment. It's a one-on-one running record that teachers do with students to get an idea of how students are reading and their decoding. That's administered at the grades K through 3, and then at 4th and 5th for any students who are below grade level. We administer STAR, which is where we're going to spend most of our time this evening in terms of what that data we'll talk about. That's more of a summative assessment, but also has some benchmark components. There's a district writing assessment that's administered at each trimester. CAS, the interim assessment blocks are utilized. And then, of course, we have the big summative test at the end of the year, which was suspended last year because of the pandemic. We used STAR in lieu of CASP for the elementary grade levels. This is the first year that we have had a similar kind of assessment schedule for secondary. We started building this last school year, which met with some challenges because of our pandemic, and finding the ability to assess our students in a virtual environment was really, really challenging at all levels, not just at secondary. But you can see we have the ELA math IABs that we're utilizing. This is the first year that we're using STAR across all grade levels. So we're going to have some data now that's going to go from kindergarten all the way up through students' 11th grade year. And I see some of you looking close, so it must be small. This presentation is in your folder, so you will have access to go back and review it later. And I wasn't sure what it looks pretty big on my screen, but I don't know what it looks like at yours, but I can see some of you squinting, and but you do have it in your folder so that you can go back to it. This is more just to give you a sense of the fact that we do have a calendar. We do have periods of time that we plan to assess our students. And then these are the assessments that we would want our teachers to use in their PLC times to be able to talk about where students are, what are some strategies that they can use to help them in the areas that they're struggling, and how can they leverage the areas where students are doing well to help them in the areas where they may be struggling. So this is an example of both the elementary and the secondary schedule of assessment in terms of those bigger pieces. I was hoping to be able to present some CASP data this evening, but the only CASP data that's available currently are just individual student scores that have not been disaggregated. So I just wanted you to know that there are no reports available yet for CASP. I even emailed Caltech to see if I could get some of those. But we are in the process of loading the scores into our ARIES and our Illuminate database system, because that will help us with some disaggregation. But lots of uploading of programs this time of year. It's really hard to get this kind of data in September. Usually we don't get this until September, October. But it is coming. We will have CASP results for our students in grades 6 through 11. Well, 6, 7, 8, and then grade 11. Oops. So the next piece is STAR assessments, and this is where I'm going to give you some actual data in terms of where our students were falling. This is a picture from the STAR assessments website in terms of what is STAR. So it is a universal screening, a progress monitoring tool, and a goal setting data provides that so that we can help move our students forward. This will give us some predictability data in terms of what we expect our students to be able to do on CASP, because there's an alignment to that. It also is a good screening tool for those students who are well below grade level who may be in need of intervention. And on your presentation, there's a link on the bottom where it says watch the video, a little 2-minute video. I can't show it to you in this format because you won't be able to hear it, but it is embedded in your presentation it's in your folder. So if you want to go back and watch that little 2-minute clip, it'll give you a nice description as to what STAR is, what it can do, and why we've chosen to use it. So let me move this. So these are the STAR reading results over the last 3 years for our students. So it's broken down by students that are in below the 10th percentile ranking, 10 to 24 percentile ranking, 24 to 39 percentile ranking, and at or above the 40th percentile ranking. This is usually used as a screening tool, again, to help us know who those students are that are in most of need of intervention. So this shows our students over time. They don't take it in kindergarten. So in 21-22, we have about 37% of our students at or above the 40th percentile rank in terms of their reading ability. So a high, 46% that are, now again, this is the beginning of the school year. And so oftentimes we see lower scores at the beginning of the year because they're brand new to the grade level. So the standards for them is going to be a little more difficult than it was when they were leaving kinder, and we don't administer the STAR at kindergarten. So we'll want to see how these numbers change. STAR is administered 4 times throughout the year. We'll check in at each trimester, and this is data that teachers use to know how to intervene on behalf of their kids. So this is the 1st and 2nd grade information. 3rd and 4th grade, you can see the trends over time. So in the 1920 school year for 3rd grade, we can see that we have had a decline in terms of the ramifications of the pandemic, where we've gone from 57% at that at or above range into the 39% range for this school year. Again, remembering that this is the beginning of the year, so we should see that number come up by the end of the school year. So I'll just give you a moment to look over those numbers. And again, this presentation is in your folder. Then for 5th grade, you can see 5th and 6th grade, you can see the numbers. Now for 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and 11th, again, this is the first year that we're going to be administering it to those grade levels. So I do not have longitudinal data for those grade levels at this point, and we're in the testing window is still open. So the data is very incomplete because their window closes, I think, the end of this week or next week. So we'll have more information about that towards the end of September. But this is the first, all of our teachers were trained at the secondary level at the beginning of this school year. They're going to be receiving another training this month on how to utilize the reports to help them, guide their instruction based on the information. STAR reading has so many ways to look at the data. It'll break it down by standard. So that the teachers can, like I say, in their PLC meetings, they can come together and look at, okay, what standard did the students do really well in? What standards are they struggling in? And then utilize that information to help them guide their instruction. To really pinpoint, we have to be very strategic because we want to focus our attention on the learning that is most impactful, that's going to impact the most number of kids. So So 7th and 8th grade data you'll see higher numbers for the 7th grade and the 8th grade because this, like I say, the first year that they're administering it. So we will not have that longitudinal, but we're very excited about the fact that for the first time, we're going to have something that's going to show over time how our kids are progressing. And this has, like I say, a very high predictability to CASP. So as we benchmark them throughout the year, it'll help us know how to use those IABs to be able to help prepare them for that CASP assessment at the end of the year. Districts that are using this with their grade levels across all, vertically, are seeing very, very good results in terms of preparing students for that ultimate summative CASP at the end of the year. And I just put 9th and 10th and 11th here just so you can see, we've got 80 kids at the 9th grade that have been tested, 10 10th graders at the time that I had done that. So I got on the phone with Mr. Wallace and said, okay, how are we doing with 10th grade? What's 11th? We only got 12 kids. Okay, they're supposed to go to the computer lab on Wednesday. So those numbers are going to go up. So we're in the middle of testing as we speak with those grade levels. So then we go into mathematics. Same kind of information, but this shows where we are in terms of math performance. And we do see that we have our numbers are lower sometimes in first grade because sometimes our first grade students, we typically wait for them to be at a high enough reading level before they even take STAR to make sure that they're able to navigate the assessment. So sometimes our K1, 2, well, we don't do it at kindergarten. First and second grade, it depends on the student's reading level before they, that pertains more to reading, but just another aside. Here's the third grade numbers as of now.
So what you had just said, is the test word heavy for math?
All of our mathematics, especially now with the Common Core, has a lot of word problems, and there is a reading element to it. They do have some just basic problem solving, but it also does have. I don't know off the top of my head the percentage in terms of how many word problems, but we do find that to be a challenge oftentimes, is that if there's a lot of word problems, that can be an obstacle for our kids being able to demonstrate what they know in math because of the challenges of the reading.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's 5th and 6th. So I'll be really interested to see once we get our CASP results for the 6th and above, how these STAR scores correlate to what we're seeing with CASP. That'll be a very interesting comparison. Seventh and 8th, and again, this is the first year that we're going to be administering at the 7th and 8th. So, now at least MPH will have an assessment that's administered across all grade levels. So when their teachers come together for PLC time, they'll have some common data that they can look at together, which has not been the case in the past. 9th and 10th, again, they have not, 9th and 10th, they had not done, their assessment, but they, like I say, I've been on the phone and they have assured me that is scheduled for this week and next week to get those assessments done. They were in the middle of their training, just had happened. So they're, learning how to administer it. So just sort of a reminder about other data that teachers will use to guide instruction besides just sort of the STAR and CASP, those big picture assessments. They're using things like quick writes and curriculum embedded assessments, observations, writing benchmarks, projects, the IABs, which are the interim assessment blocks, quizzes, early literacy checklists, formative class check-ins, jam boards, all, whoops, sorry, oh dear, let's go back. Whoops, that's not what I wanted. Whoop. I went too far back. Oh, yeah. Technical difficulties, hold on. I got trigger happy. Okay, there we go. So lots of different ways that teachers, can assess students, and often those assessments that are more daily and in the moment can be the most beneficial to help teachers know where, you see Jordana nodding, to really help kids know, or teachers know, where their students are. So those are an invaluable way of teachers being able to be very responsive in the moment to student learning needs. So I'd like to thank you for your time and attention. And do you have any questions?
I do, of course. So, so my question is basically this. So with all the COVID money and the expanded learning grant and all these monies that we have received, and portions of these monies have to go to supporting the, for lack of a better word, is the lost learning due to distance learning. So are you, I know that the sites are looking, teachers are looking at this data, sites are looking at this data. They put their plans together on how to create the targeted assistance for the students that, are really needing that extra support. So at the district level, the larger, are you collecting those plans or interventions? I mean, I know they're in the site plans, but collecting all of that to put into the required plans of like how we're spending the money, and you can go, based on this data, this is what targeted assistance we're doing for reading. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, well, and the site plans are primarily, they're utilizing their Title I resources and utilizing using those resources for interventions. One of the things we're doing at the district level is the professional development days that we did on the first 2 days before school started. One of the ways to address the various needs of our students and where they are in their learning process is our daily instructional practices. And those universal design for learning strategies, AVID strategies, those highly impactful instructional strategies that inform best first instruction are invaluable for the kind of learning experiences our students, are participating in every single day when they're in classes. So, having that high level of instructional practices happening every day. And then we're also utilizing some of the resources. I know some interventions, some extended office hours, those kinds of things for teachers are one of the ways that has been earmarked for providing some intervention opportunities with the COVID money.
I am so excited about the secondary assessments. I can't even tell you how excited I am that we're all on the same page. I just am. God bless everybody who put the time and effort in to make this happen.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming. It's been a very difficult road to get here, but I'm very excited. And it's not perfected yet, but have made tremendous strides. And I got to do a shout out to our TOSAs. If it was not for them and their boots on the ground work with our teachers, building relationships with our teachers, supporting our teachers, helping where needed, it would not have been possible. They've been a tremendous, tremendous asset in this work getting done.
Going to add to Cindy's excitement. I'm blown away. This is fantastic, and being able to have it data driven. I know there's been a lot of work to be able to get this all in place. And I used to be the CST, which used the STAR testing. I know from past experience how useful the reports are that teachers get. So I'm thrilled. I'm wondering whether there's going to be any kind of, Zachary mentioned Room 101 and the math lab that Mr. Wallace and Mr. Arlington are putting together, the math and AVID lab. Is there any tie-in with, there's a lot of moving parts here, so it's okay if there isn't, but is there any kind of links already anticipated there?
Links between the assessments and the
Yep, so the data that will be received, any kind of gaps or holes that need to be addressed. And yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think that learning lab, because one of the things, you know, intervention or filling in holes is really going to happen at the classroom level in a lot of cases, and actually is most effective at the classroom level because those kids have relationships with their teachers. So having that learning lab available so that when the teacher's looking at their data and they're like, okay, I can see that, you know, 60% of my kids didn't get this particular concept. And then when you go into that learning lab, then you can construct that experience where you focus on those skills that you know they're either doing very well in or deficit in. And then you can see their processing and know how to intervene on where they're specifically having difficulty because you're seeing them do it in front of you on those 360 labs. So it's a great way to be responsive to where you see the student learning needs are. So I see it as a very direct correlation where you have the data. You know, we've talked about assess and address. We really don't like that whole learning loss concept, more of this idea of we want to assess them and then we want to address the needs. So the STAR can be the assessing, and then they can go into that 360 lab to do the addressing it and do some specific direct instruction in the areas where their kids are struggling.
Fantastic. Is there, are those supports also going to be somehow available at the other school sites?
I'm gonna the writing, math lab, and science is also involved, Jordana. That's coming out of the site Title I money, and it's part of its actual SIPSA. So that was what came out of their conversations of what they want to do. And Tori really wanted to rework Scott's Academy to become more effective and using what Heather has already said, which is using that data to really key in on those students that need that extra layer and make it more effective this time around. But it's a site money.
Well, I think it's fantastic.
Yes, Bill?
Heather, your assessment of the global evaluation that you see here from this, and I appreciate that we're going all grade levels, but what is your global assessment that you see as you've looked even across already some of those comparisons?
Well, obviously, I noted that there's been a decline from year to year to year. I mean, that was that was a little disheartening, I will admit, as I was putting this together. You know, you sort of knew that was going to be the case, and I'm hearing that it's the case from my colleagues across the county. Larger districts are experiencing there was always this hope that maybe that won't be the case. So what I noticed is about a 10%. Pretty consistently across. So we have some work, we have our work cut out for us. And so that's why, I really believe that the more impactful we can be every single day in the instruction that we provide and the opportunities for learning where kids are engaged in high level activities supported with their teacher, and then opportunities for revisiting those as they, that best first instruction, those universal design for learning strategies, those AVID strategies that we know are so powerful with our AVID students, having those utilized across all subject areas, those strategies are very, very, very impactful and have high yield, outcomes. So that's why we're focusing our professional development this year on universal design for learning strategies and AVID strategies at the secondary level, because we think that best first instruction will really help our students who are behind and expose them to grade level content with support.
Thank you. And Heather, you also touched on something that I was going to ask you, and that is how it's comparing to the numbers in other districts, because it appears, I'm guessing, that there is this, whatever word we're going to use for it, that's across the board, across the country, probably the globe, but especially it's everywhere.
Yeah, and I talked to mostly people within the county, but I had a meeting with some of the assistant superintendents across, the mountain and desert areas, and they were saying they're seeing some similar kinds of responses from there. They just have star data too. So like I said, I'm interested to see the CAS and how it correlates, but even when we had to give the CAS, we were in a hybrid model. We were struggling to get kids in county campus. They were there for a short period of time. So utilizing that time to give them this test was, the validity of that. I know some teachers, I think, have some questions about how valid that data is going to be just because of the circumstances surrounding how we had to give it. But I still think it'll be interesting to look at the comparison between that data and the STAR data. And then hopefully we'll see that growth pattern as we give it throughout this year, because we'll give it again at the trimester for elementary, and then we're giving it 2 other times. Actually, Mr. Wallace worked very closely with the secondary team so that they could help set the calendar of when they believed the benchmark system should happen, so that I think it's, let's see, February, and then again in it's on the count. I have to go back to the calendar. Actually, here it's on here.
And how long does it take to get that information back, the results back, once you
about 20 minutes. That's on that little video that's embedded on that one thing. It takes about 20 minutes to get the results. So the results are which is one thing we like the CAS, you've got to wait months before you can get the information. STAR, teachers will have it by the end of day. So they can get and the teachers can opt to give it to their kids more frequently if they choose to. We've just chosen to give it as a district-wide effort at these particular dates, which is the next one will be in November for secondary, and then there'll be one in February. But a teacher can opt to give it to her class whenever if they're wondering, hey, I'm kind of wondering if they've improved in this area, they can give it to their kids whenever they want to. It doesn't have to only be administered during these times. It's just we've set up some standards, so at least we know for sure it's happening at these benchmarks, but it can be utilized more frequently if teachers choose to do that.
In my experience, Bill, too, is they'll give it to an individual student who they think is making progress and they want to assess that appropriately. That's my experience with my children, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Thank you, Heather.
And one last thing, I am really excited about this because we have an upcoming mid-cycle WASC visitation for the RIM High School. And one of the critical areas for follow-up is the use of common formative assessments. And we'll be able to say pretty much for the first time, here we have them. We developed them collaboratively, we're going forward with them. And I'm just so excited to be able to find, because this has been something that's been on ongoing WASC reports. So it's something that we can say, yay, we're getting this done. And I just think that's just yet another fact of how we're moving the school district forward, and especially in secondary. So I'm really excited about this.
Well, then in addition to this, we also have the Illuminate system at the secondary level, where teachers in other subject areas can build their own assessments that they would like to create their own little common formative checkpoints or whatever. And this STAR data integrates with the Illuminate system. So for example, when we have a student study team meeting, or if we're looking at a student who's not making progress, we can get a data report on a student that will show all of their data. It'll show their LPAC, their CAS, their STAR, and then any other Illuminate assessments that the teacher has administered, to give a sense of where the student is on multiple measures, not just on one assessment. But because sometimes a kid may not do well on one particular type of assessment, but may demonstrate proficiency on other assessments. And so it gives us a better picture of the student as a whole, and not just judging them based on the outcomes of one test.
So following up with that, so for EL reclassification, I know that can the STAR tests be used as part of the reclassification criteria? Because that's the other part, is it's grades, it's the test, can't just be CASP. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and a benchmark of some kind was one of the criteria and we didn't have a benchmark to use for reclassification, which was really was problematic. So this can be utilized for that purpose as well. Yeah. So a lot of things, it's exciting to see some of the pieces coming together. Nothing's perfect when you roll it out. So I always say, expect glitches, but we will work through any glitches. But I feel like we're moving in a positive direction. And it is exciting to see some of the pieces merging together. All right, I will stop sharing. That sounds terrible to say, but I'm going to stop sharing.
Thank you very much, Heather. Okay, so moving on to 10.2, Finance Facilities, update on current school facility projects. Jenny Haberlin, Chief Business Official.
Hi, can everyone hear me okay? It's been a while since I talked today. Okay, good.
Yes.
So I have a quick update along with Paul Bonacorski. You all remember Paul from CPM. It's been a while since he's joined us at a board meeting, but we have a more thorough update and some proposals to bring to you at the October 21st board meeting. But you approved last spring our assessment to do our air quality assessment contract with Paul. They've been working over the summer, he and his team and Jim, and they're nearly done. We wanted to just give you a quick update about how it went over the summer work, where we're at. I have a couple documents in your board folder for you, and just, we can touch on those, but it was really just so you can see some ideas. And I'm really going to turn it over to Paul to talk about the team he assembled and what we have been doing this summer and start of the school year. Oh, and you're muted, Paul.
Hi. Hey, I thought I unmuted myself. So, hello, Paul with CPM, and quick background. I don't know if the program used to be called the Senate Bill, Assembly Bill 841. Now they want us to call it Cal Shape.
Cal Shape, yes.
Cal Shape, and somewhere around May 28th, they got serious about getting input. The draft in June 18th, a draft July 1st, and up until July 1st, there was no program for what the district has, because this district and probably like other coastal districts have no real air conditioning compared to down in the desert, where everything's air conditioned. And so they had a preliminary, and roughly on the 13th of August, they actually printed something and everything about the 3 programs and even the ventilation pathway. So
if I can just add on there, Paul, just so in case anyone doesn't know, the AB 41 was the state money for the efficiency upgrades for school districts as far as air quality and HVAC, but it morphed into 3 other pots of money that Paul's explaining, that we wanted to try to leverage some other great grant funding with ESSER money that we have available to also do some projects. So we were really, Paul's been helping, he's done all the research on what would qualify us under the new Cal Shape. And so moving into leveraging some of our own ESSER money and some state money on top of that to do more. So I just, in case we haven't really talked about it, I just wanted to interrupt, Paul. I'm sorry to give you that background.
No, feel free. Anybody can interrupt me. I'm pretty flexible that way. And then the team we put together is myself, obviously working with Jim's team. And then we had a design engineer named Steve, and then we have a energy management consultant also named Dale. And Dale used to be a facility planner down there in Apple Valley. I guess he's quasi-retired, I don't know. But he's now, and he's an electrical engineer by trade. And then we also have, to finish up the the assessments, and really in the green highlighted areas, a mechanical engineer. I'm sorry, mechanical contractor. And this program does require, prior to submitting to for the program, a engineer actually review whoever did the assessment. We actually had the engineer do the assessment, so it's actually a little better, I think. So the progress where we're at now is we're mostly done with the surveys. What Jenny gave you, if you see highlighted green rows, or those are units we couldn't get to or just ran out of time. It was about 2 10-hour days, maybe a little bit more on one of the days, to walk it all and look at the existing system. And those documents can be used for other stuff through Jim's department, for developing other plans. So it's not just for this. It'll have a dual or triple purpose someday down the road. The good news when we walked it is I scared Jenny and myself a long time ago with what it would cost and what it did cost on a district in the Muroc School District, which was over $100,000 per classroom to air condition it. Because you got to do electrical upgrades, a whole bunch of other stuff. But what we saw, and there was a diagram sheet in there, with some sketches kind of breaking down everything, is that it should be a lot less to meet a lot of the program for not air conditioning, but filtered ventilation and quality air and CO2 monitors. And if you had to add air conditioning, it should be well like a third of what I gave her, maybe. But if electrical upgrades for the campus is required, it'll be about 2/3 of what I gave her. It adds a lot of money to upgrade your campus electrically. And then all the units that, I don't know if this is a diagram, I don't know if anybody got to see it,
Yeah. I can also share my screen, Paul, if you'd like me to.
I think it'll be real quick is that since Jim has been, Jim and I are kind of the same age at the district as far as our experience with the district. And the middle one is really what Jim, when he replaces an old forced air unit, he is replacing it with a newer one, more efficient, that could take a higher MERV filter and allows space for air conditioning coils. And there's no room if you use the old unit. So everything we saw that has been replaced over the last few years is good. And that should be the standard going forward. And that's it. So that's all I had on that one, Jenny, really, is just to share the existing, probably the one we could afford in the middle. And if funding was no problem and local bonds had passed, you probably could do a lot of 3.
So what we were talking about when Paul, Jim, and I met this week, was it this week? Yeah, it was this week, I'm pretty sure. The days go into each other, is that by moving towards kind of the unit in the middle, we add outside air to a classroom that may not have outside air, which is a requirement. We add a better filtration of the air. We add a more efficient heating unit to the air, to the unit itself. And then it has the room in it, is if we look at, I know this is a totally different conversation for the future, but if we look at going after whether it's a parcel tax or another bond measure, or being able to tap into future money, then we have we're building the infrastructure to be able then to do the next phase when more money becomes available. And so it's units that we can build upon that then will kind of allow us some more efficient spending in the future. I think Paul might be able to explain it a little bit more eloquently than I can, but because we looked at then the middle section is, except for maybe a few instances, we're not getting DSA involved. Is that correct, Paul?
Yes, that one actually fits more maintenance.
Yeah. And so, but then as we move forward with an air condition, like adding the air when more funds become available, having that that electrical upgrade and condenser units, which the to add AC we would require, that triggers DSA.
Correct,
So,
because a lot of those might be on the roof.
yeah. And
Can
so
be.
then, and then on top of that, I might be getting a little ahead of us, Paul, but you know, having, you see in that the diagram, maybe I'll have Paul explain it, that EMS, then that becomes almost what we did in the PAC, which is like that control system where you know, Jim would have more control over the units, the temperatures, how the filters are doing, inside out, outside air, and whatnot.
Yes. Yeah. In how the new modern units work, if it's called outside air or it's called the economizer. And if you're trying to cool the room down to 72 degrees, there's a sensor that senses the outside air, and it will bring in, if it's at 72 degrees outside, it'll actually open up and not have to air condition. And each space of buildings requires so much fresh air. I think a classroom requires, I think it was 30% outside fresh air. A gymnasium would be 100%. So 100% comes in, and everything varies. And ultimately, you want all that to happen automatically. And that would be the third chart. Very, a lot more expensive. In our process, we will have a rough budget and what EMS system could work for the district, we hope in October. And then some decisions would be made that if the board said go air conditioning, then we have to get back to the energy company and get load calculations on the schools. But we have to go electrical load calculations. We have to go all the way back 2 years plus, because there hasn't been a full year of school for a while. So it's gotta go
And to tap into that AB 41 or CalShape, you know, we do have to look at some efficiency standards.
right.
And so adding air conditioning where there isn't air conditioning already, it makes it tough to show that we're actually going to draw less energy than we would before we're actually going to be adding to our energy pool.
That would be nearly impossible.
Yeah. So,
Sort of like government accounting, I think, you know, sometimes.
yeah. So one of the things that we're going to, and I'll let Paul kind of jump in on this too, there's some minimums that we're going to want to do regardless of a direction we go. And that is the CO2, wait, Paul, I'm going to murder it.
It's a CO2 sensor.
A CO2 sensor. And we can possibly go the UV route or an ionizer route, which helps filter the air and clean the air also. Yeah. I mean, so depending, no matter what we do, we want to look at some of those options.
Yeah, and I did send, I didn't know, you probably didn't have time, Jenny, but I did send you and Jim they call them bipolar ionization modules. And there's really no replacement on them. And the two of our partners did buy them for their house, and they say good things about it. And the school district in Muroc did their whole district that way. And that was one of their ways to upgrade. And so, and if you bought them and did them yourself, they're between $400 and $500 each. If you have a contractor install them, you're in prevailing wage, you're at probably $1,100, $1,200 a unit. But they're really easy to install. Yeah, the CO2 sensors is a must to add. And the goal is to, right now, you have to open your windows to get the fresh air. And then probably one of the hardest parts, if we don't do air conditioning, is coming up with a good way for outside air for that. And I would say 50% of the areas we looked at difficult, and 50% of the areas not too difficult. So, and those would be all controlled manually. So if it got really cold, Jim might want to come in and his crew crank it down so you don't get so much outside air to try to heat the room. So, and I don't, you all know there's shortages of everything. Two things of this program, the funding, the first phase of it, they basically say, unless you're an underserved community, you won't get any funding. That's how I read it. And we didn't have much time to read it and figure out everything. And then the other part is equipment, air conditioning right now. The recommendation from a mechanical contractor to me is, if you don't have to do it now, wait. It's just really expensive and product is hard to get. Yeah, and nearly like 50% more. If you go try to buy an air conditioner, it'll be very expensive, and just everybody's busy, you know, and there's the supplies out there. So.
Yeah, and as far as qualifying for the funds, we would want to try to leverage. If we're going to do a project anyway, we want to be able to tap into any money that we can for certain.
Yes.
So there's one code that we didn't get a chance to look at that to see if we would qualify. But you know, the first rounds though do go to communities that are 75% plus free and reduced lunch.
Yeah.
And then there's some other qualifiers if we've been designated an underserved by poverty level and through health matrix. So, but then we have some code to look up, but it didn't look like we would be in the first rounds.
It made it, besides ineligible costs they have, it made it sound like they weren't even going to consider it until that first round was mostly used up. And that was the first I read that, you know, from over the few months. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, could be good based upon costs, you know, or, you know, and I think, I mean, the O2 sensors, they're getting creative. They're mixing them with thermostats. So some of the O2 sensors are tied right into the thermostat. And that's kind of, we just noted, we saw one of those innovations at a school about 3 weeks ago. So that's kind of nice. And then, yeah, so as far as the update, I think we're going to try to put some rough costs to do number 2. Jim has done quite of the middle diagram. Jim's done quite a few of those with a more local contractor at prevailing wage and following all the rules. And I think that's between 15 and 20 every time he does that, $20,000. Yeah.
And we would probably, if we had a large scale and targeted by classroom upgrade, we would first need the state's permission to use ESSER funds for this. We would want to try to apply for, even if we weren't in the first round of funding, we would want to apply for the formerly AB 841 funds, just try to be in line if we do qualify. And then we would, you know, want to put a package together, you know, probably utilize call for some construction management expertise, and then move forward with going out to bid, because then we would hit those levels instead of just picking it up. You know, we wouldn't want to just take one, you know, do one classroom at a time and have, you know, 500 POs. We would need to package it all and go out to bid.
And most of the classes we visited that didn't have operable windows, which is few in the district, did have air conditioning already. It just didn't have the fancy outside air stuff. Some of those units might be new enough to add what's called the economizer, and some of them might not be able to. That's where we get into more detail past the assessment, because that requires the engineer to get involved and kind of tell us what's needed so we could price it.
And we've been asked, well, why can't we just add the MERV 13 filters to our old units? And I even asked that too to Jim and Paul, like, well, why can't we just, you know, buy a bunch of good filters? And really, it's because of, and I'll probably murder how to explain it, but it's the, you know, the machines, old machines don't have the power to get the air through the filters.
Yeah, there's actually a test, even in this program, that and probably so you can get a new unit to do the higher MERV, that if your unit can only do a MERV 7 or a MERV 5, you would give this document that has it would be a technician that does all these tests. And Jim said he did have the test. So when you go through if you're really bored, you'll see some MERV 7s, MERV 11s. MERV 11s are on the unit, for the most part, on the units that have been replaced the last 3 years or so. And that's a pretty good filter. I mean, in my own personal house, I bought everything the same time. One unit I could use a MERV 11 and 13 on, and the other one I can't. It just kind of dies. I have to go down to a 7, and I can't explain why. But it does. But that could be another way to help under the replacement pathway versus the just limited ventilation. We might be able to access money to get the new middle unit, you know. And that's where, again, this just came out not too long ago. So, and then that's pretty much my update there. Did I miss anything, Jenny? We were trying to
I
keep it a
know.
little simple today.
I know. I think we got everything. I was looking at my notes while you talked also. So
Yeah.
we're really calling this, you know, an upgrade to the heating units and ventilation with the ability to add air, you know, depending on funding.
Yeah, and for sure, one school would have electrical issue and possibly another, and that's where the load information would be required. Jenny's given me kind of a budget to stay in, so I kind of read all these before I spent more money, because we just we got what it costs to actually do the survey and all the days and the time and everything, and then now I'm just trying to balance how much to do to stay within that budget on the purchase order.
So Paul, which school it would have difficulty? The one
High
that
school.
the high school figures.
Yeah, that has the most obvious. You have a lot of specialty there. Like we looked at the wood shop, auto shop, all those, you know, the art room, everything, the welding. They've maxed out their electrical there, you know, over the years. There's a lot of new equipment nowadays compared to the old days. And then in the high school, it's very expensive to do electrical. And if anybody wanted to propose it, the end user never really sees that $1 million or $1.5 million that it would cost to do. But you could expand on it. I mean, the elementary school we did in Muroc was somewhere in the neighborhood of $900,000 just for the electrical upgrade for about 30 classrooms. 20, yeah.
And that's why, the conversation kind of all tends to lead back to, you know, looking for that other revenue source to be able to finish some of these projects too, which I know is another conversation. But you know, just keeping our eye on any state money, local money, if it becomes an opportune time to talk about that again. And there's just not. I think we're tapped out on as a district for modernization eligibility.
Yeah.
So
even if you're eligible, there's no money.
Well, here's I know this was going to be part of my report, but legislative report, but the that 3.5 trillion budget reconciliation budget includes school infrastructure. And I'll get into the exact thing, but part of that requirement now for that money is there's a matching requirement. So that what CSB and CENDUBs and Capital Advisors are kind of hoping is that with that federal requirement, it will motivate the state to put a bond on the ballot. And so then a school district who goes for its own bond or parcel tax, whatever, the matching that you get matching funds from the state and from the federal government. If this works, if this California is motivated by putting the bond on the ballot so that we can there's more matching opportunities. So I don't know. We'll see how this all goes, because you know, there's lots of debate going on.
The best possible way to have control of anything is a local bond. So you could have that match, or you could have a little flexibility, you know, doing that. It's tough.
Well, it just puts also more motivation for us to, I don't want to put this out there because it's a board whole thing, but just it gives you districts more of an impetus that if they don't have a bond that they just passed, to maybe think about that in the future, to take advantage of more funding opportunities. So just putting it out there.
Oh, yeah, yeah. If the bond did pass, there'd definitely be more flexibility to move a lot of things on the third diagram.
And Jenny, how much money do we have available in ESSER now towards this?
Well, we put a kind of a budgetary placeholder in just for internal planning. And that is something that you'll see in an update of mine tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
You never want to tell the construction guy or the architect what your budget is. But so it, yeah. And
part of that is because our ESSER plan needs to still go through a stakeholder and a board approval process too. So we don't want to assume that we have money to spend in one area when we don't know for certain that we do. So.
And I work with a lot of small school districts, and all I hear are complaints of other mandates that have nothing to do with this, so that are taking away from construction projects. So anyway, that's the update, and we'll see what comes up for October.
So unless you had any other questions for Paul or myself, that's the end of our update.
Thank you, Paul and Jenny.
Thank you. Looking forward to the numbers next month. That should be shocking and educational.
Yeah, what I'm going to end up doing is more of a general budget because I won't have the engineer stuff, but I can just do a general budget of doing that middle sketch, and then a little bit of, it's going to require some guesstimating and some allowance on that third one. Yeah.
And anything that DSA gets opened up.
You know what? You actually, now you bring up a good question. At the moment, DSA, the only thing that you might get is fire alarm because CO2, but access, they're not targeting this program. So if you do an air conditioning, it could just be straight air conditioning, no sidewalk, no access. So that part I feel good about. Yeah. So
okay,
yeah,
that's good.
Yeah. But the program does exclude electrical upgrades. So that's the bad thing. Yeah. But I think on the DSA side, I'm not as worried at the moment from what I've read. Yeah. All right.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Okay, 10.3, budget, unaudited actuals and enrollment. Jenny Haberlin, Chief Business Official. Back to you, Jenny.
Okay. So I am sharing my screen again, so hopefully you can see it okay. All right. And you also have this presentation in your board folder. Can everyone see the screen? Okay, great. So it's that time of year again where we're reporting on the current enrollment and then the unaudited actuals. So what the unaudited actuals are, it's the closing of the prior year financial, the books of the district. So what we've done is over the summer, we've closed our books. We've done the numerous state reporting that is required when we close the books. Each separate grant and resource gets really treated like a mini sub-fund. So there's reporting that we do on that level. And it really just, we pull it all together, and it's due, by ed code, it's due by September 15th. That's why we have an early board meeting in a couple times during the year with those 15th of the month deadlines for some of my reports. Okay, so normally, we try to align the financial statement and the budget with the LCAP. We monitor position control throughout the year, and we've been updating you monthly on our budget and our student enrollment, and then we review our expenditures Normally at this time of year, we would talk about where we were last year, what was our ADA, because we've been in declining enrollment, that becomes our next year's funding because we're paid on the prior year guarantee. So normally we talk a lot about, where we were in enrollment and ADA, and look at trends. So, but I feel like 1920 to a point, 2021 and probably 21, 22 is going to have a big asterisk by it, probably for the rest of my career, really, in school business, because it's just the COVID years. It's where analyzing trends of expenditures, you're going to have this blip of, well, we didn't spend money in this category because we weren't running buses, or we spent, 5 times as much in another category because of needing things to address the pandemic. So just looking at that and almost feeling like we are at a reset, like we are just going to do, get through 21, 22, kind of see what a quote unquote normal year is like, and then see about future planning. It's not tough, but it's also when you want to look at, budgets, we've had an influx of one-time money on the restricted nature also with the COVID funds. And really our time has been addressing the pandemic, the needs of our schools and our staff, and really not getting to this regular business. And I think everyone's feeling that way. Our days are tied up with almost reacting or responding to the pandemic. But we close out a year, and that's what we're here to talk to about you tonight. So this is just a graph of our LCFF by object code. And I've shown this graph at every presentation we do. And I highlighted 2021 because that is, it's closed out and that's exactly where we're at. 21, 22, and moving forward, our enrollment has increased over budgeted, and we're still working through that. I wanted to highlight, italicize it and kind of gray out those, because those I already know will change. The base grants and the amount per ADA has been updated with the state's enacted budget over the summer, that we received in July, but the ADA and the future ADA has not been recalculated based on those numbers yet. So this is, ADA and projected ADA at budget development, which we did that in May and June, and the new dollars moving forward with that. So I do expect these numbers to improve because of our enrollment starting the year has come in over projections. So which is a good place to be. But I wanted to let you know the next time I present, either probably informally or formally, these numbers for 21, 22 moving forward will change. But it gives you an idea that kind of how our revenues fluctuated each year as we were getting towards full implementation of LCFF, and then zero COLA, and then super COLA, and then moving forward, that held harmless ADA, even though the numbers will improve, you can still see in the 22-23 school year, that is that financial cliff just based on ADA alone that almost probably every district in the state is facing. You've heard that probably at every meeting you go to, if they touch on fiscal issues, is the financial cliff that we're facing as a district. Okay. Alrighty, so this is just a breakdown of how our 2021 LCFF funds, oops, sorry about that, by category came out. So in total, we received, just under $30 million in total LCFF funding. And you can see how the different categories of LCFF that, the different pots of LCFF that the money, where we earned it. And one thing I'd like to highlight is really the LCFF is based on looking back at a base year of 12-13, 2012, 2013, with only getting to the purchasing power of 2007, 2008, when districts had the highest purchasing power, in our relative history. So, that is, yes, we're getting full implementation of LCFF, but I'd like to remind everyone that it really isn't full funding. It's not full and fair funding. We use that term because it's really based on a base year of 12-13 and going back to purchasing power of 2007, 2008. So one of the things that I'd like to highlight too is just the amount of our unduplicated pupil count sitting at 58%. We're really hoping that we can get that into the 60s. We haven't been successful at that. It looks like we get there, and then once we adjust our numbers and reconcile it, we really are at that 58%. Okay, this is just a graph that highlights, it's right off of the LCFF calculation, on the state software. And this is just of our total LCFF, how much is supplemental and concentration grant and the projected amount moving forward. Okay, next slide is just a look to see about of our total revenue in 2020-21, how much is LCFF based on ADA and how much is other sources of revenue. So you can see relative to our total budget, yes, we're getting a lot of one-time monies on the federal and state side, but really the big amount of our funding does come from ADA, and which is student driven. So that's why, just to pull, always circle around to how important enrollment is, because it is the biggest pot of where we can generate revenues. Great. Okay, this is just our graph of our total spending in 2020-21 by category. Basically, we really did stay pretty consistent in the areas of our staffing, our benefits, our retiree benefits, and our classified and certificated salaries. Maybe a little bit higher in services and contracted services, but that's probably because we had more one-time money, and we were, this is unrestricted and restricted. So I mean, we had the influx of COVID money, put into that. That's why I said, we're really going to, when we compare year to year to year, we're going to have a couple years where that's going to be really hard, to really analyze from because of the one-time money. Okay, we had some major savings and increases on the unrestricted side. We had a little bit of an increase for lottery. Usually that's typical because when we receive our lottery projections, we're always given a very conservative number, and usually sales come out higher. We get our lottery totally just based on how many people are playing. So, the state does give us those estimates on a very conservative level. So we usually expect to get a little bit more than we budget. We had some fuel tax credits. I think maybe in the spring or maybe last winter, we had an agenda item to the board that we were tapping into a new service to do our compressed natural gas for our buses. And this is the monitoring and reporting that Jen Cable does. And so we were able to recoup some of those fuel tax credits, and that's completely goes back into the unrestricted side of the budget. We have other minor, that this is cumulatively refunds and credits. We had a CTE and strong workforce program grant to offset our CTE salaries. ROP used to be a separate funded program at the county and state level, and now it's just lumped into the LCFF program. So if we didn't have the CTE and SWP grants, that would all be coming out of the base and supplemental concentration grant dollars. For the first time since I think ever, I don't know, I've been here 23 years now, I'd have to go back and see, but we have a zero contribution to child nutrition services. Cindy, I see your face. And there's a couple reasons for that. And that is because we were serving everyone free and we were doing the community feed, we were reimbursed at the free rate at the state level and the federal level, instead of having separate rates if you're a paid student versus a reduced student versus a free student. So everyone that we served meals to was considered free. Last year, it continues this year. And that rate that a district's reimbursed is at a higher rate when you have a free student. So we were, so our revenue was higher, but on top of that, and this is in another slide too, but I'll just jump to it a little bit. On top of that, we were able to offset costs by using the coronavirus funding. So, I mean, because we did have meals that we were buying more shelf-stable products, more prepackaged, more able to go type meals. And those increase of costs, we were able to charge those directly to the COVID funding. So the combination of the two created a zero contribution and actually even a reserve going into the 21-22 year to help offset the 21-22, which contribution that's budgeted. I'll probably be making a budget adjustment at first interim to eliminate that contribution as well. Okay. We had an increase in our special education AB 602 funds of just under $200,000. We actually got that information in August. So we were getting a lot of updates while we were closing the books. And it was a little frustrating this year because you would think you got on top of your work, maybe did something a little early just to get an update. So, and then have to redo reports over again. So that happened more than once this summer. So I don't know, I might not try to do as many things in July as I tried to do this summer. So it backfired a little bit. So, and then we had reduction of special education expenditures on top of that of 141,000 going into this year. So,
Jenny,
so those,
what
okay,
in terms of the reduction of expenditures, can you elaborate a little bit on that? Because it might be misinterpreted as we're not providing appropriate services per the IEPs and 504s.
It absolutely wasn't that, because we actually had to report this to the SELPA, and that 141,000 was specifically made up of some staff that was no longer in our special ed department, replaced by a newer teacher or aide staff members where the district naturally had savings there. And then the amount of extra duty subs that were used, and this was just all across the whole district, but specifically to special education. You know, we had people working from home a lot. We had, we weren't in session. So where staff normally may have needed to take a sick day or vacation day or had an event going on, they were able to still work around, I think, a little bit with more flexibility because of the schedule, the distance learning schedule we were on. So in every area of the budget, and this is on a different slide, we had savings in that area, every area. We even talked about it at the with both employee groups last spring on, because we talked about we're going to have some fallout savings going in, once we close the books for that reason alone. But I actually, in fact, it's on my desk to sign. We had to report this because there is a maintenance of effort that we have to pass and that we have to spend. There's 4 different tests you have to calculate, to ensure that you're spending at least on a per capita or an in total basis, the same amount of money or more each year on your special ed students. So that's something that we do. It's not part of the document that you have because it's not included in the unaudited actuals, but we do 2 separate reports to the SELPA going through our maintenance of effort.
Any, in that reduction of expenditures, is any of that special ed transportation from last year, or would that fall under a different category?
It's not part of I do have it, and it's on it. I'll jump forward to a different slide. We did have a small amount of savings in a transportation, but when we were, because we were held harmless, as far as our ADA and state funding, we did have to also hold harmless contracts that we were, certain contracts that we had entered into for things like transportation. So even though we didn't have all of our students being transported, let's say to some of the schools down the hill by the county, we still had a majority of their contract that we had. We were obligated because we were getting held harmless for our funding. So we had to hold harmless their contract. But we did in that, from memory, Jordan, I could look it up. It was around a $40,000 savings because they didn't charge us excess charges that we would normally get in a year, such as maybe overtime if it was a foggy day, schools ran out late. So we would normally have to pay our share of those costs, which our share of those extra costs didn't happen. So we had a small savings. But that's not part of the 141, because we can't count that as part of this.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Okay, we also had some savings in the budget because of using COVID-19 funds to offset previously budgeted general fund expenditures. We had sudden growth in our home choice program during the year, and we needed to add 2 teachers. We originally had that budgeted as a unrestricted district expense. We were able to move those expenditures into some of the COVID expenditures. We were able to offset some of the home choice administrator for that same reason. Like I said in the previous slide, we were able to use some of the COVID-19 funds for the child nutritional services products. We supplemented the parent pay transportation. So we offset some of the transportation costs, with COVID money because we didn't earn that income. So while our bus drivers, who did a fabulous job, were doing the beautification projects and some of the deep cleaning, so those days while they were doing that work, we were able to charge to COVID funds because they were disinfecting and cleaning the sites. And then we received we received in 2021 1920 charges that we were previously going to submit to FEMA on some administrative time accounting that we did. FEMA no longer allowed us, so we didn't put that in our FEMA grant, and the district, that we closed the 1920 books with those funds in there. The San Bernardino County Superintendent Schools, they opened up some of their CARES Act money and went back to 1920. We were actually able to claim some of those dollars, and that was about a $79,000 addition from the 1920 school year. So kind of it all adds up, $70,000 here, $40,000 here, as subcategories, there. It really all adds up.
And what's it add up to?
Well, we'll get to that. Okay. So we also had programs that, just based on being a closed year, we had campus closed for the majority of 2021. And so we had transportation, fuel repairs, contracted services. That's normally falls in that department. Like I've said before, we had general fund, certificated and classified substitutes, in every department and every category. Same with overtime pay that we would normally pay our staff, contracted services that we would normally contract out. We just weren't doing some of the things because we couldn't. Here again, Jordan, like I said, contracted special education transportation. We had a tough time filling vacancies during the pandemic. So jobs that we had budgeted for, we were, it was taking time. So, and then not having necessarily always a sub available, we had some fallout savings from those unfilled vacancies. And then I think because of just the nature of the beast too, and it all over the district, we had discretionary spending that wasn't, everyone didn't spend every dollar of their budget. I mean, and they normally don't anyway. We try to get the sites to spend as much as they can because, you know, there's just not as much money, but really over the entire district, we found a lot of discretionary funds fall out. Okay, so this is just a snapshot. It's also in the unaudited actuals that you received, but this is just a blown up of our ending fund balance. So we have our 2021 unrestricted ending fund balance moving forward into 21-22. It's just over $7.3 million. And you'll see that we have our set aside reserves and our minimum 3% reserve for economic uncertainties, are taken out of that already. So, so moving forward, we are compared to what we estimated at, we're about $1 million. We're more than $1 million higher than we anticipated going into the year, of course. Although throughout the year last year, we were kind of starting to calculate what our savings would be. And this really, I'd like to highlight, this is a big piece of being able to have the time to address what are we going to do to address that fiscal cliff. So we really, if we're looking at silver linings to COVID, is some of these one-time funds, and then some of the funds that have fallen out really has bought us some time to kind of go back to the drawing board maybe and see, we're going to be doing expenditure plans for COVID funds. And then if we really piece apart the unrestricted side of the budget, start looking at the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years and seeing where we're at with the updated enrollment figures to see, okay, where are we at and where do we need to be? Okay, on the restricted side of the budget, we have, I want to just let you know, this does not have any of the new 2021 budgets in there. This is just the 21-22. This is just the 2021 ending balances that then carry over. So we have things like restricted lottery. We have some mental health dollars. We have our expanded learning opportunities grants. Remember, we board approved that in June, and most of those dollars are being spent in 21-22. Just an accounting function of how some federal programs are accounted for, things that aren't included technically as a restricted ending balance, but have carryover, is our Title I, our ESSA, CSI money, and our Title III. So in Title I, and Title I's funding our TOSAs now almost entirely, we're carrying forward, 936,265, and then our CSI, and then our Title III. I stole some slides from the governor's financial workshop in July. It was from school services, just to see. I don't know if you can see it in my screen. The sharing is kind of hiding some of it, but you can see where we were at the January budget, the May revision, and then the enacted budget. That's the 3 columns. So on the LCFF funding increase, from the May revision to the enacted budget, there wasn't any. So our original budget was built with our LCFF relatively the same. We had the cost of living increase. We had that mega COLA. So we added the 1% to get it to the 5.07. And that's included in the LCFF amounts that I showed you previously. Okay, this is just a history of our cost of living increases. So moving forward, you can see for 2021, we were scheduled to get a cost of living increase as 2.31. It was not funded last year. So we're actually receiving, that's part of the 5.07 that we receive. We're actually receiving the cash in the new fiscal year. So the 2021, yes, it has a stated COLA, but it was not funded. And then 21-22 COLA is 2.7, but then they added the mega COLA plus last year's COLA compound the two, and then it's 5.07. And then relatively, depending on who you talk to, some people think that these COLAs are a little high, and that we can expect them to be a little lower. But we use the FICMAC version of, and the Department of Finance COLAs. So, okay, a positive thing, I'm kind of mixing in now where we were and moving forward with the enacted budget. So we were talking cash flow a lot last year, and worrying about, we had an agenda item that was going to be presented on possible borrowing needs. And then the governor had $13 billion for districts to have deferrals. That means kind of like an IOU for their state apportionment. In January, he's had the 3.7, May revision 2.6 billion. And that's when really everyone was up in arms, because obviously the state had a lot of money coming in, and to still have IOUs for districts was just, everyone, it was just ridiculous. So because you use that when you're broke, you don't use it when you have money. So that this system. And so then of course, the 21-22 budget moving forward has zero deferrals embedded in it. And that's really not purchasing power, that's cash flow. Okay. I wanted to throw this slide in here. I did put it in an update maybe a few weeks ago about the unemployment insurance. This is just to keep things like this maybe in the conversation. We had a 1.3% increase in the May revision to our unemployment amount. And then although we were scheduled a 0.05%, that's what the school districts have been charged. So going from a 0.05% to a 1.23% was, hundreds of thousands of dollars for even a small district like ours. In the enacted budget, it was reduced to 0.5, which is still a significant increase. And districts were unallowed to lay off during COVID. Our ADA was held harmless. We kept our staff on. After the enacted budget, the districts received from the Educational Supplemental Fund, the 1.23 increase. So really, it just came through the back door as an increase to the school districts. So where an average business owner will still be at the 0.5, school districts with a supplemental educational fund portion that we pay into unemployment, we're right back actually above the 1.23. I didn't write it down, but it's going to be about 1.5. We're back to the 1.5. So of the unemployment. And so just to kind of keep, as we're advocating for schools, there is, yes, it's not part of the state budget, but it was just another, like I said, a backdoor way to increase the cost, but not have it really be in the state's budget, that it's a cost increase to schools. Okay, I wanted to talk about enrollment. And so this is just where we're at tentatively for August 2021. You can see we're at 2,923 district-wide. Oops, sorry. Now we budgeted 2,771. So that is, we definitely we weren't sure what we were going to see. We're definitely happy to see growth. This is really the first time I think in years that we've actually had an actual, not growth compared to budget, but growth compared to the prior year. So we ended last year at 2,844. So we're 79 students of an increase from where we were in June. So having, giving the sites, this month, and Scott in my office, he's reconciling month one attendance, see how the next couple weeks will go. Then we'll use that enrollment to base future projections on. And that's when I was saying earlier that our total LCFF, although the dollars per ADA, will stay the same, our actual ADA projection moving forward will be a higher number. So that's what we still need time to calculate. I'm not saying that we should probably expect growth every year. This, is this another year that we'll have an asterisk and it's a blip because of COVID? We are seeing growth mostly at VOE, although it's been small growth, at every school, every grade level. We saw a growth in kinder at VOE and a high growth of first graders at VOE. So we did talk last spring about, did parents just keep their kinders home last year? And since it wasn't compulsory, they, entered them in as first graders. We have an increase in our 9th grade. So has students come back to RIM? We had a 53 student increase going into 9th grade compared of our students who were in 8th grade last year. So really, I wouldn't call 1 year a trend, of course, but it is a base number to then project forward on, even if we decide that we still want to project declines every year. And if this is a blip, at least it's a higher number to start with, which will have a positive impact on the financial statements.
So Jenny, I have a question, and I'm trying to figure out how to word this. If you were to look at what was in, like, if 3 years ago, if you were to take a look at projected enrollment before COVID, how do our numbers right now align with what we were anticipating without COVID? Because I know last year we had a bigger drop than expected.
I would have to go back and look at that, but that's a really good question. So I didn't anticipate that question, but it's a good question. And so
sorry.
I can, no. I'm just, I'm digging for another pen because mine fell and I'm not in my normal desk. So, but that's actually really good. Like if we look at the 18-19 school year, as we were building the 19-20 budget, I think that would be a really good year to look at. Well, what did we budget for our year 3 and year 4 and see where we're at, because we did have such a decline in the 2021 year. So
yeah,
we'll definitely do that.
To learn that. Thanks.
I'm just writing it down, but that's that. I'm happy to do that. Okay. Does anyone else have any questions on our current enrollment? Okay. All righty. This is a summary of where we're at with our COVID funds, and you have a more in-depth summary coming to you tomorrow with some detail behind it. But we've had, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 buckets of COVID funds. And you can see in the buckets that have a slash, that bucket's even been split into further little buckets. So, but in general, at this level, we can just talk about if that's more on the accounting side than what you need to worry about. But we had some expenditures that needed to be completed, by May of this year and by June of this year. And so we made sure to spend those monies accordingly. And so moving forward, from what is already planned and in the works, we have about 1.9 million of ESSER 2 and 3 that have still, that we haven't necessarily cemented the plans for yet. So, and I'm sending that detail to you. You can review it and ask me any questions. It's probably a 12 or 13 page document. So, but you can just review it on your screen. All right, so our next steps really is we're going to hopefully in September and October be able to adjust the budgets and get all those entries posted. The county is still doing some work on wrapping up our budget and LCAP review. So as soon as they're done, the system will be open for us to post budget transfers and post some new money and start working with staff on some of those site level projects. We'll monitor our enrollment, see how it goes. We'll look at our unrestricted side of the budget. We'll start working on revised multi-year projections. The audit is scheduled. Actually, they'll be here next week. So our auditors to wrap up the 2021. Our first interim will be presented December 14th. And then we'll just really keep working to collaborate with employees, looking at funding scenarios. And like I said earlier, we're going to really need to be almost pick apart the two sides of the budget as really two separate budgets and have a little bit more separation, because we have expenditure plans on one side and reduction plans on the other side. And it's easy to kind of get clouded in the craziness of having a lot of one-time monies to suddenly need to spend, and then being able to verbalize, in 2 years, maybe why we have reductions in one areas when we still have, money on the books for something else. So once the system's completely open, we'll post the new monies, and we'll reconcile those, the A to G new monies, the educator effectiveness, the expanded ELO grants that we'll be receiving, the expanded concentration grants. We don't even have all that data yet on the exact dollar amounts and when those monies will be coming in. So we'll start working on that as really wrapping up in September and October. And I guess open for questions.
I'm not seeing any. This is an extraordinary amount of work, Jenny. Thank you very much. And I know it's even more so than what you would normally have to do each year with all of the different pieces that you have to put together. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
All righty. So 10.4, setting direction, legislative update report, Trustee Gardner.
Okay, so in your board docs, I put in a couple of things, the federal legislative advocacy report, but I also add in them the positions of SANDABs, just as a reminder of what bills and what our positions have been. And then I also gave you an extensive bill report of, what all the bills are and where they are in their progress. The deadline for this legislative session is this Friday. All bill language had to be passed, forwarded, amended, all that stuff 72 hours in advance, because the wording has to go forward and published and yada, yada, yada. So basically, if something has not passed, it's done for this legislative session. Now, a bill that didn't move forward, you'll note, like I said, AB 388 didn't move forward. That doesn't mean that the bill's dead. It just means that it may be taken up in the next legislative year. And so just giving you kind of a heads up. Now, any of the bills that have passed by the deadline, the governor has 30 days to sign them or not sign them. So we will get a significant update in SANDABs after that 30-day period. So with that, I'm going to jump into the big discussion in SANDABs, and pretty much every single video session I've been part of is AB 130, which is the trailer bill for independent study. Interesting that CSBA Capital Advisors on behalf of SANDABs really pushed to have a ton of changes because it just isn't working. The new independent study requirements, especially using independent study as a distance learning option, it's not a good match. So especially as it relates to the students who have to be in independent study for a short time because they're in quarantine. That was the biggest challenge, trying to have that short-term amount meet the very stringent new independent study requirements. It was a nightmare. So there's now more flexibility for independent study. We didn't get everything we wanted, but there is more flexibility. So for the students needing short-term independent study, especially due to quarantine, we'll get the funding as long as there's some tangible evidence that is presented that they were put onto and into independent study. We have a flexibility on the delivery instruction, meaning they could do the take-home packets, Zoom video instruction. We have a lot of flexibility on the delivery of the instruction. We just need record of the work, like the students given a take-home packet, they complete it, it comes back to school. Just a reminder, independent study, the student work has time valued, meaning the teacher has said, okay, this assignment takes 20 minutes. So it's time value for the work. So a big change was we do not have to have a master agreement completed prior to a student going into independent study. Before, one of the stringent requirements was you have to have that master agreement completely signed, the contract done, then the kid goes to independent study. You don't have to do that. We now have 30 days to complete that master agreement. And now also there's this 15-day, the first 15 days of independent study, which is very much related to that quarantine period for students. We have a lot of flexibility in regards to not meeting all the stringent requirements of independent study. So that, especially as it relates to the synchronous learning requirement. However, there's a caveat with this. The 15-day cap is for the entire year. So if a kid goes into quarantines for like 10 days, then later has to go back into independent study because of another quarantine situation and goes in for another 10 days. 15 of those days falls into the more flexible, less stringent requirements. But after those 15 days, the more stringent IS requirements fall into place. And it's really, I feel for everybody that has to figure this out on our cabinet and our admin. And CSBA was going for more days in that cap and just didn't get it. One good thing is that was brought up by a board member on the SANDABS is that students who take that winter break, it's supposed to be 2 weeks, and they go for 1 month to visit family somewhere, that, they get the 2 weeks for winter break and, maybe they're gone for an additional 2 weeks. Well, they'll be able to fall in that more flexible first 15 days of independent study requirements. So that's kind of good. In regards to synchronous learning, the language is very vague in the bill, and there's not an actual time that requirement for synchronous learning, like you have to do synchronous learning for 30 minutes, and time for check-in daily on elementary level. It's very vague. So you just have to make sure that synchronous learning is an option, and it is not an option, is available, and you're giving it to students. If a student, say, is taking that month off at winter break and decides to not check in to the synchronous learning, we still get the ADA. We're not going to be have that money taken away. The child is just going to be marked as non-participatory, but will be, as long as they're in independent study, we'll get the ADA. So that's a really good thing. Also a really good thing is that the bill increases the amount of days a sub can sub from 30 days to 60 days, which doesn't help the shortage, but it does help us in trying to staff better. And then in regards to the J13 waiver, which relates to funding, will be protected relative to the funding in relation to the staffing shortages due to COVID and the quarantine of our staff. So it's kind of giving us relief in being penalized on that stuff. The interesting part is the new provisions for independent study in this bill. They will go into the controller's audit guide, which I think Heather has, or somebody has spoken to about before. So we do need to track synchronous learning time, the daily check-in, the work, all of that stuff like we did last year. However, CSBA, Capital Advisors, on behalf of SANDABS, we're trying to make sure that the guide is not laden with all the original issues, the really strict issues that we now have the flexibility on. Does that all make sense? And that all happens in the spring, like Jenny has told us before. There's still, though, the long-term independent study issues, especially in special education, those did not get fixed. Don't know what to tell you. Okay, so moving on, because I'm sure we'll get updates on how that really works in our district. AB 361 is an urgency bill relating to extending the flexibility of the Brown Act, meaning still being able to do Zoom meetings, that kind of stuff. Caitlin from Capital Advisors didn't have the exact end date for this push, this extension, but she thinks the extension would be through the start of a new year. It wouldn't be just a couple of months of an extension. It will be longer than that. So signs that this bill is going to be passed is that there's legislators and the governor that are putting amendments in to allow other organizations other than schools to continue Zoom or Zoom-like meetings. So there's hopeful signs that districts will have flexibility to do Zoom board meetings, especially if your COVID cases are on the rise. So that's kind of a cool thing. The California State Board of Education was discussing today the Smarter Balance SBAC, and is expected to adopt a shorter version of the SBAC. Just to let you guys know, heads up on testing. AB 438 is on the governor's desk, and he's expected to sign it, which is the bill that would require districts to submit layoff notices to classified employees by March 15th, the same as teachers. In districts that budget conservatively, which is ours because we're in declining enrollment, that this might be a little shock to the classified employees system, because we may be giving out layoff notices knowing that we will probably bring some of them back, but we have to do it for the purposes of notification and being in compliance. So come March, we might have some classified employees that are a little bit disconcerted by the process, but this is something that CSEA at the state level really wanted. They wanted the exact same treatment as teachers in terms of layoff notices, which makes it harder for districts to do budget adjustments, especially if the state cuts your budget, mid-year, which has happened before. So also to let you know, there is a dramatic decline in ADA across districts in the state. The state's not sure if the students are coming back. Just it's a wait and see. I know we got some extra students, but that didn't happen everywhere. And then on the federal side, there's a debate going on Congress on 3 items: keeping the government open, which I hope they resolve in time, infrastructure, and then the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill. I already talked about the infrastructure for schools, that there's $82 billion in infrastructure for schools. But like I said, there's a matching requirement now. There's also $35 billion for school nutrition. This doesn't take us to universal meals like President Biden really was pushing for, but it will increase the by 9 million students getting their meals covered for free. So progress, but what can you say? And the last thing is that from the FCC, the Emergency Connectivity Fund, or the ECF, Jenny knows this, I'm sure, that was the fund that was set up to close the digital divide in allowing school district to buy Chromebooks, laptops, hotspots, those kinds of things. There was $7 billion in this fund. There is still $2 billion left, not spent. So the FCC is opening up the ECR application on September 28th. It's due, it closes on October 13th. Districts will need to send out new surveys to gather information on who needs new devices, like if they've been using an old device, and looking at making sure that the devices are good for the next 3 years, and any additional hotspots or connectivity devices. There's not much time, so you would have to, you know, really hop onto the whole survey thing. And I just want to, that ends the report. I want to give a shout out to Zachary. I don't think he's on anymore, but Zach actually did his homework. He read the SANDABS platforms for both the state and federal legislative platforms. He gave me a really in-depth, lengthy, well-researched response. And I brought it up to SANDABS. I'm like, I gave our student board member homework and he actually did it. So everybody's like, wow, that's pretty cool. So I think there's going to be more outreach by boards to their student board members. So anyways, I was told that there's a little bit more time. So if you guys did not give me your input on the platforms, even if you want to keep them, like I know Jordan, fair and full funding, let's keep it. Whatever it is, if you just shoot me an email, no changes or good to go, something to let me know that I can say, we looked at this, here's our input, that would be awesome. Because I'm really impressed that Zach, I mean, it's pretty lengthy. I'm really proud of him because I was like shocked. Really, well, I shouldn't be because he's a great kid, but I'm just saying is that he did a really well thought out response. So with that, I know that was kind of lengthy, but independent study is a huge deal. And with that, oh, and CSBA is doing the webinar on Monday regarding governing challenging board meetings. I'm going to just say it like that. And then there's, of course, the San Bernardino County School Boards Association's Brown Act training or workshop Monday night. And I hope you guys can attend to it because they'll be addressing a lot of issues of what you can and cannot do, including don't send emojis or like signs to other board members or your superintendent on social media. There are way more rules about that. So just letting you know that that might be a good training to go to. And then there's the upcoming fall joint meeting with Riverside County. We're going to have congressmen there. Pete Aguilar said that he would be willing to participate. And we're going to have student voices within the program. So I'm looking forward to it because it's, I think that San Bernardino and Riverside counties are really collectively putting on a very thoughtful presentation. So it's nice to see that. And that's coming up next month, sorry.
Fantastic. Cindy, did I see that you're presenting on Monday or that you're one of the panel members?
Yes, that was interesting. So Troy Flint from CSBA Communications Director, he reached out to me because Nikki Dentman recommended me to, I'm like, oh, well, I've been on a board that went through impasse. That was challenging board meetings. And now in this time, there's challenges and making sure that you do the board's business. These board meetings are for us to conduct our business and district business and putting the focus on our students' education and our employees and all of that. And so just making sure that you don't lose sight of that and how to make sure you stay on task.
Wonderful, thanks. Okay. Okay, 11.0, my glasses on, public hearing. 11.1, procedures for public hearings. Public hearings are required on specific items such as instructional materials and public textbook compliance and waiver of certain procedures for sale of surplus real property. Due to the modified meeting procedures during the COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, if a member of the public would like to support, oppose, or otherwise offer an opinion on the issue, an email should have been submitted to the executive secretary to the superintendent by noon today. Once the board president opens the public hearing, written comments will be read aloud and subject to the board's usual time limits for public comments. When public input is concluded, the board president will close the public hearing. 11.2, educational services, public hearing for instructional materials and public textbook compliance 2021-2022. The public hearing is called to order at 8:45 p.m. Do we have any public comments?
No, we don't.
Okay, thank you, Connie. No, we don't. So with that, the public hearing is closed at 8:45 p.m. 12.0, action calendar. 12.1, superintendent, approval to provide for the second reading of the proposed new board policy VP 0415, equity, to be added to our policies and procedures. The board policy was provided by the California School Boards Association, CSBA. Fiscal impact, none. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Bill and Natalie second. Any discussion? Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 12.2, personnel services, approval of the personnel page, fiscal impact, budgeted.
So moved.
Motion. Cindy,
Second.
Natalie, any discussion? I'm personally very grateful for all of, so it looks like a bunch of new hires. I know that Todd and Morgan have, and also site administrators, a lot of different employees have been heavily involved with interviewing and getting excellent new talent. So we still need more, but there are quite a few people that we are going to be voting on in just a moment to have added to our employee list. Okay, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 12.3, personnel services, approval of a short-term staff permit for math teacher Omar Munoz Diaz, effective 8/9/2021, fiscal impact, none.
So moved.
Second.
Was that Bill or Bill for the motion?
Yes.
Okay. And then Cindy for the second. Any discussion? Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 12.4, personnel services. Approval to increase the per diem rates paid to certificated substitutes as follows. Effective September 10th, 2021 through June 8th, 2022. Regular substitute, $150 per day. Long-term substitute, $175 per day. Substitute retired from Rim of the World, $165 per day. Long-term substitute retired from Rim of the World, $190 per day. Fiscal impact to be determined.
So moved.
Seconded.
Cindy? Jordan? Any discussion?
Yes, Todd, I have a question. So
Go ahead and vote. Oh, go ahead.
when we had Golden Handshake, there was a caveat that, you know, teachers couldn't come back to sub for like 5 years. Was that waived? You know, so that retired teachers can, within that 5 year, I don't know if we have any, but 5 year, can they come it back and sub for us?
Our understanding is that that 5-year golden handshake was not waived. What was waived is the 6-month wait. When someone retires, typically they can't work within the next 6 months without kind of getting penalties against their retirement. So this actually waived that provision. So if we had a teacher that retired tomorrow, they actually can come back and substitute on Monday.
Okay.
So is that probably muted? No, I'm not.
No, you're good, Jordana.
Okay, so that 5-year waiting period, is that from our school district or is that a state requirement?
A state requirement.
Okay,
We're really through CalSTRS. Let me correct that, it's through CalSTRS.
okay.
Thanks, Todd, because I didn't hear anything about it. I heard about the 6-month thing. So I just was like, I wonder if that is possible, because I know some teachers that were in that 5-year.
Yeah, we have a couple that have 1 more year left.
Okay.
So, yeah.
There's a certain math teacher that I would, Jordana's nodding her head because she knows who I'm talking about.
Yep.
Put the screws onto that guy.
Okay. Anything else? Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, 12.5. Educational Services Approval of Resolution number 21/22-02. Pupil textbooks and instructional materials compliance for fiscal year 2021-2022. Fiscal impact not to exceed $35,000, unrestricted general fund, district office lottery.
So moved.
Cindy? Is that Natalie? Any discussion? Let's go ahead and vote. I'm hearing something. That's gonna.
You're kind of cutting. And so are you asking for the vote?
Yes, I'm asking for the vote.
Aye.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Lovely internet here. Sorry, folks. 12.6. Business Services Approval of Resolution number 21/22-01 for adopting GAN limit. Fiscal impact none.
So moved.
Bill, was that Bill?
Yes.
Cindy, second.
Yay. Thank you. Any discussion? Let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. 12.7 Business Services. Approval of the unaudited actuals financial report for 2020-21. Fiscal impact none.
So moved.
I heard Cindy, and was that, do I have a second?
So seconded.
Jordan? Any discussion?
I think Jordan made the motion.
Oh,
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Big thank you to Jenny, of course. I always look forward to this report.
I just have to say, I am like in shock. Child Nutrition Services, 0. I've been on this board since 2012. I'm so excited right now.
it's a big deal. Very big deal.
Very
All right, let's go ahead.
very positive numbers there that we're getting from Jenny. So thank you, Jenny.
It's good news. It's good news. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. So 13.0 consent calendar. Do we wish to have anything pulled? No, okay. Then can I have a motion for all of the items 13.1, 13.2, 13.3, 13.4, 13.5, 13.6, 13.7, 13.8, 13.9, 13.10, 13.11, and 13.12. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
So moved.
I heard Cindy. A second?
Second.
Bill? Any discussion?
I always like seeing the avid college field trip, college tour field trip. That's always exciting.
And just to let you know that the college field trip is a little bit more money because they're taking both 11th and 12th graders since they did not have the field trip last year. So that's why it's a little bit more expensive than we usually see.
I think it's just great. I mean, it's not an opportunity I had when I was in high school, so I just love seeing that.
It's money well spent. A lot of these students have never been on a college campus, and to see so many wonderful campuses, they make the most of the opportunity, no doubt. It's fantastic.
And I was a little concerned just about how these trips are going to be made in light of COVID. So there's certain procedures that are in place to try to make sure that the kids are safe and the sponsors or the teachers going with them.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so to go ahead and let's go ahead and vote on the consent calendar. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Okay, we have nothing for 14.0. 15.0, governance team future agenda items planning. 15.1, time allotted for the Board of Trustees to request agenda items for future meetings.
Okay, I'm not sure if this is a future agenda item, but you mentioned town hall meeting, Jordana, in your board report. That's not something that we've all collectively discussed in terms of, do we want to have one? What is the format? Is the format going to be more like time with trustee, where, you know what I'm saying, or at a community space, or are we having it, you know, at RIM High School? So I think that's something that needs to be collectively discussed, since we kind of tabled time with trustees, but is this just a mutation of it? Then we need to have that discussion, and how is that going to take place, and where is it going to take place?
Good point.
And I was thinking the same thing, that I think we need to do some type of community, like you were saying, Dana, and whether that's just a conversation or more than that. But I think we need to give opportunity for people to communicate.
Well, I agree. I just want to make sure that we're all on the same page and we've all agreed to a structure and a venue, that kind of thing. So I think that we need to have that conversation.
So, and I think time's a little bit of the essence. So if we were to wait until the next board meeting to agendize it, would be challenging.
Well, we can't,
but it's also, yeah, but I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
No, I just am thinking is that we just need to have that conversation.
Any you said you're not too sure about having an agenda, but we can't have that conversation without first having it on.
We need to have it agendized as,
yeah.
Or the other component is that if we bring this up in board goals, you know, we haven't had board goals check-in. The time with trustees was originally part of, you know, one of our success indicators for a board goal. We talked about changing that and updating it to be more impactful. So another idea is to just have the discussion under the board goals, but we didn't have that.
What if we tossed it to the media committee, the superintendent media committee?
Well, we disbanded that committee. So do you want to revive?
Right. Yeah, we did.
Yeah. So we would have.
We didn't. It's the superintendent's committee.
That's what I'm saying, is that if we chose to put it on hold, so it can be revived because it's the superintendent's committee, but it would have to be revived because we put it on hold till next year.
Yeah, we did. And I right now, our cabinet, our staff is so overburdened. Ideally, I wouldn't want to have them have to be tasked with yet another thing. Under the auspices of us being available for the community to be able to speak with us.
What was Natalie putting her down for?
I don't know. Natalie, is there something you wanted to say?
We're getting glitchy.
Thumbs up. Yeah.
I love this. We're all getting glitchy. Instead of tired, we're getting glitchy.
Yeah, I'm sure my internet isn't helping the situation.
It would be very
So,
easy to reenact.
Cindy, what do you suggest?
Can you hear me?
Yes, go ahead, Michelle.
I think you could really easily reenact the pairs for time with trustees and do them in the 3 locations, the Crestline, Lake Arrowhead, and Running Springs area, because we had those in the past. So we could have dates and flyers and reenact that for those conversations without having to have a board meeting to discuss a town hall. You could have those time with trustees just started up again. We did not
Fantastic.
have them when all the businesses were shut down either, but the businesses are open. I'm sure there's a place in Crestline I know that we could probably use. And
Oh, wait, is that Paradise Coffee? I'm also, I agree. I like that idea better than going and trying to reinvent the wheel. We have had something in place. I also like the idea of having something in each community instead of one central location, even if it is at the high school, just because of if there's weather or whatever, fog, we don't have people driving across the mountain. So I like that idea of having a session at each part of the mountain.
I can make those flyers and get input to who's on what date and where. And I will put those in I will get those out to you with some suggestions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Thanks for bringing that up, Cindy. Is there anything else under 15.1? Okay. Then before my internet totally gives out, 16.0 future meeting dates, regular board meeting October 21st, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. to be determined pending executive order in 2920. And then regular board meeting November 18, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. to be determined pending executive order in 2920.
I would like to remind you of the possibility of a special board meeting regarding the LCAP revisions next week, but we'll know more from Heather. We'll notify you by Monday.
Okay. Sounds good. There's no need for us to go recess to closed session. So 18.0 adjournment.
I make a motion to adjourn this meeting at 9:02 p.m.
Do I have a second? All right, Jordan. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion passes unanimously. Good night, everyone.